everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Monday, President's Day, February the 17th, 2020. My name is Carey Holzman. Welcome in. And we got a bunch of people in the chat room already joining us. Welcome in, guys. Thanks for jumping in early. Today I want to continue the Dream Machine build, which things got really busy last week, and I had a couple presentations. Those are in editing. And what else? The power supply from EVGA came back, and I got the other machine to complete as well. And then I've got a laptop sitting here that I need to just clean up, which I'll probably do off camera so I don't expose any of the customer's private information. And then we can get back to the 3950X, the Xenos build, and of course the mini ITX system that we're putting together for a friend of mine. And that's just those builds. I've got some other ones coming down the line here, so got to keep moving things forward, and hopefully you'll enjoy the process. Now, a couple of things I wanted to talk about before I get started today. One was there was a recent edit done showing the dead on arrival power supply and how I went about fixing it. And there are a lot of people online on the internet leaving comments to the effect that the fact that I got a single bad power supply out of, how many EVGA power supplies have I used? Somewhere around 80 to 150, somewhere in there, over all the years. I got one bad power supply, out of the dead on arrival is what I mean to say. Now, because, and I want you to listen very carefully to how unrealistic and how delusional many people who watch YouTube are, because I find it profoundly disassociative with reality. One bad product out of literally dozens, and they come out with knives and pitchforks going, this is why I won't use EVGA products. I didn't like EVGA before, and this is exactly why. Listen. Unless you're building computers for a living, your individual experience relates to nobody else but you. And this idea that some people online have, that whatever affects them is universal across all people and we all think alike, is sort of like this world revolves around me and I'm entitled. This idea that there's some company somewhere that makes every single product perfect, never has a failure, that they're never impacted by the way the product was handled or shipped by the shipping company, that there hasn't been an issue at a factory. It's delusional. It's disconnected from reality. The reality actually is that when companies make bad products, unreliable products, or perform or offer bad support, those companies go bye-bye. Bye-bye. They go out of business. It's not a sustainable business model. When I'm choosing parts, I'm looking for a company that's offering me a solid value. I'm not looking for some extreme expensive part to impress people with, nor am I looking for the cheapest part so I can scrape the bottom of the barrel. What I'm looking for my customers and to sustain my business, as I have for nearly 30 years, is a company that overall produces a reliable product that's available, that's not constantly running out of stock, that has proven itself to be reliable, and has a very low rate of DOA. Requiring a 0 DOA means you will just have to make it yourself. And I'm sure you'll have some excuse when your product fails that you're not offering the actual people who do it. So because Joe Schmo sitting in his garage or in his bedroom builds a computer and has a bad experience with a product, he or she then determines that every product from this company is crap and wants to jump online and yell to the world like he's Paul Revere, beware, beware. But let me tell you my story with EVGA. We had that video card that arrived a couple videos back where the customer sent back a machine. The video card was bent. EVGA replaced it, no questions asked. Let me tell you the story of the power supply that went bad. I called EVGA, they replaced it, no questions asked. The power supply's already been replaced, it's already here. If I'd have bought it, purchased it locally, I could have just simply returned it to the retailer and swapped it out. It could have been a same-day replacement. Instead, me personally, I chose to mail it back to EVGA. That was my choice. I could have sent it back to where it was purchased. Probably could have got a return a little faster. How a company deals with defective products is as important as the product itself. And when people on the internet are making claims about product failures and punishing the company for it, with no consideration over giving that company a chance to make it right, those people are not worth listening to. Just mute them, ban them, get rid of them. Those are people that think the world revolves around them, and those are people who have unrealistic expectations that nobody in the creation of this universe could meet the expectations those people have. So my advice to you, when you're making decisions for which parts you want to buy, isn't to find the cheapest price. It's to find the cheapest price for the best quality product. And the best quality product means that it performs well, it performs reliably, and if you need support, that it will be there for you and they will take care of you, and not just look for excuses on why they won't support you. Every time I have contacted EVGA, I get somebody in America, I get somebody who's not reading a script, the support is 24/7, and they always take care of me. Same is true for Corsair. Every time I've needed something from Corsair, they have provided, and oftentimes Corsair has gone above and beyond. So I have no issue recommending and using EVGA and Corsair. And yes, we're going to encounter bad products. When you can introduce me to a company that's never made a bad product, you let me know. Otherwise, your opinions regarding EVGA and Corsair mean nothing to me unless you buy in quantities of 1,000 or more. If you're not buying in quantities of 1,000 or more, I don't care about your 1 out of 1,000, everybody should play the lottery because I won kind of an attitude. Nobody should play the lottery because I lost. Because of what you did doesn't define what anybody else should do, nor does it define the company. And the idea that you think, the person, not you personally, but the people who do this, that they think everybody is just like them and thinks like them, they need to be sort of shaken a little bit and go, hey, we're all unique and we're all different. Show a little respect, show a little consideration for other people's needs and desires. If you want to share a bad experience, please share your bad experience. And if you want to say, I'm never going to buy that product again because of my bad experience, you have every right to feel that way. But to suggest to other people that they too should jump on your bandwagon and join a gang and perform some sort of pitchfork and torch ceremony as though you were wronged because you had a part that failed and you didn't even give the company a chance to help you. That's the other thing. Now, if you try and reach out to the company and the company won't respond to you, or the company's just looking for excuses on how not to honor their warranty, let's grab those torches and pitchforks. In the meantime, I have a huge thank you and shout of gratitude to the folks specifically at Corsair and EVGA for just taking care of business and making it right. They always go above and beyond. They don't sponsor me, they've never paid me. I've got a business to run. And if I'm busy replacing products all day and I have to pay for them out of pocket because the company that I bought them from was like, super cheap stuff out of China or whatever, and got it on eBay and it's no name brand, and now it's costing me out of pocket to take care of my customers, I can't stay in business. Or I tell my customers, hey, sorry, your power supply died. They won't warranty it for me, so I can't warranty it for you. Say goodbye to my business. I can lose my business 18,000 different ways. So when I'm telling you and sharing with you these experiences, I want you to understand the massive quantities that I'm dealing in. And it's not just one guy sitting in a bedroom having one experience, and from that one experience they're extrapolating for everybody on the planet. It's almost a form of mental illness. It's such a close-minded, inconsiderate, narcissistic, world revolves around me attitude, it's very upsetting to me that people are so self-centered that they can't see beyond the length of their arm. So I want you to be aware of that when you're watching reviews on YouTube or you're listening to somebody go off about a particular product. What did the company do? Was the company offered a chance to make it right? There's plenty of things that I've been upset at Amazon for. There's listings for false flash drives, you know, that claim to be 256 gigs for $3 or something, and they're really just 8 gig flash drives. And I have let Amazon have it. Like, how can you continue to list this stuff? You look at the reviews. Where's the policing? You just let anybody sell anything here? But for every 3 of those bad listings, they've got 150 million good listings. Well, maybe not that many, but it's disproportionate, right? There's always going to be a wart. There's always going to be a stain. But it's not the thing we should focus on. It's not the main exemplification of what they stand for. These are exceptions to a rule. They are not the rule. At least with the companies I'm dealing with here. And I want you to know, EVGA took care of me. I've got a brand new power supply from them right here. Let me grab it. And as you can see, just like Corsair did, they sent me a whole brand new power supply sealed in a box, even though they didn't want everything back. They didn't want the cabling back. They didn't want the box back. They just wanted the power supply. I sent them just the bare power supply. And in return, they sent me a whole brand new boxed power supply. And I got it Friday. So it was 1 week turnaround time. And I could have had it faster if I wanted to cross ship it, but I'm so busy, I'm like, you know what? That's okay. We don't need to cross ship. I got other things to do. When it arrives, I'll take care of it. But I have to tell you, those companies that stand up and have the customers' backs, those companies need praise. Those are the companies that need encouragement. Those are the companies with this concept that a bad product is reason to never buy a product from that company again is not a good enough reason. It's got to be that when the product went bad, that the company did not support you, that the company didn't return emails, or the company was looking for excuses on how they weren't going to support you. Those are the companies you can complain about. Every company makes a bad product. I make mistakes all the time. You see me do it. Is it a big deal? I'm not going to buy a computer from Carey because he built a computer and it broke. And I fixed it. And it hasn't broke since. I'm not a magician. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. So for people to recognize value, true value, means you've got to look at multiple facets. You can't just see one single side of it and say, well, Amazon has no value at all because they sell some fraudulent products. Well, they don't sell it. They allow third-place market sellers, which make up probably fewer than 0.5% of all items on the fraudulent ones on the site. So therefore, the entire site is bad. If you want to go through life living that way, I feel really bad for you because you'll never be happy. And you'll never see the beauty in life, you know. It'd be like stepping outside and going, you know, it's a beautiful, clear, sunny day, but fill in the blank. Instead of focusing on the huge sky and the abundant air, we're going to instead focus on some minor little thing to make us miserable. That, I'm telling you, is a mental illness. And once you're aware that you're doing it, if you choose to stop being miserable, it's your choice to stop. It takes practice. Just like it took practice on how to learn to be miserable, you created a habit. And if you want to go around thinking other people want to hear your misery, we don't. So, you know, it's just a downward spiral psychologically, and it's rife on the internet. And I want you to be aware it's very contagious. So as you read through the internet and you see a lot of this, please be self-aware that there's a lot of ill people. They're not well. And they'd like for you to become one of them, like a zombie. They'd like you to become a zombie too. Be you. Just be you. Don't worry about anybody else. In the meantime, my thanks once again to the people at Corsair, the people at EVGA, for their easy-to-reach, friendly support, took care of business. That keeps my customers happy. That keeps me in business. All right, let's move on. Contribution has come in. Let's take a look here in the chat room. What do we have going on here? Wilkins Rojas has contributed $20. Hey, thank you, Wilkins. And make sure that Wilkins is a moderator. He says, I haven't been on here in a while. Always great to see you. Well, thank you. We've got 520 people watching live now. Brendan Looney has contributed £2. Thank you, Brendan. We'll take a quick look here in the chat room. Is Carey turning red or is it me? I might be. I fail to sometimes understand the amount of effort and energy an individual will place into harming another entity, person, or company when they themselves weren't necessarily wrong to the... Look, let me put it this way. I was severely abused when I was a teenager in high school. Physically, mentally, every way, nonstop, day after day, week after week, month after month. It never stopped, okay? A bad power supply is not the kind of thing you fight back at like abuse. It is not an intentional or malice thing to get that upset about, right? When you go to high school and you're being picked on, you're getting beaten on, you're being shoved in lockers, you're being chased home, you better hope you outrun them. If they catch you, they're going to beat you. That's something that should get you worked up. A bad power supply, it's like a weird sense of entitlement. Is your life that good? If your life is that good, then you should really think about that before you complain next time, because if that's the biggest thing you've got to complain about, if that's your biggest injustice in the world, God, I wish I was you. Rick Lakes contributed $5, and Bearpaw has contributed £2. He says this is something for Lyle and Jimmy. Right on. Thanks, you guys. So hello, Rick Dusk and Dave Murray. Hello to Alhaj Tepej and Sherry McFarland. Hello to Jonathan Fazani. Hello to Marta and Hugh Wong and Sharon Idle. Hello to Ghost Shadow and Bearpaw. Hello to Steve Warrington and James Hook. And hello to Kevin Napier, Zen Carter, Dale McIntyre, and Thomas Robinson, Greg M., Luke Greenia, and Stephen Bernstein. Stephen made a very generous contribution to the channel. As I mentioned prior, John Jack Wilson also. Thanks you guys so much. I mean, thanks doesn't seem good enough, but you know, these people that make large contributions, I make sure that they have my phone number and they can call me anytime they want to call me, because they're so helpful, and what they're doing for this channel, most of you will never know. And for that, just makes them super, super members of this community. PM Crisp says hello, and David Ice, Eddie Tuig, and Luke Greeny as well. So my problem is when I start naming names, I start feeling bad when I leave people out. And sometimes it's just because they're not in front of my face like this. So please don't take it personally if I've left you out. Peter Brooks and Matt Foster, Steve Devine, William Dawson, Eddie Milne. I see Linda's hanging out there, Willem Gordon and 55 Staying Dude, Jan Giddings, John Peck, Darren Gilholm, Ardo Rasanen, Edward Green. Welcome in, guys. Tina McLaughlin, Philip Musto, Ray Sudbury. Okay, let's get some work done today. We're going to continue with the Dream Machine build. Oh, and thank you to Andy Nicolau, just contributed £2 as well. Where's my drink? It's over here. Andre says hello from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Welcome in. Stephen Bokar joins us. Hey, Stephen. Steve makes the little vinyl stickers and bumper stickers and stuff. He's got his own printing business, and the quality is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. In fact, I need to hit Stephen up for some more merch ideas. Let me silence my phone so we don't get bothered today. I forgot to do that. There we go. That'll take care of that. Okay. Now, where we left off on the stream last week was I had installed the motherboard. I've not yet installed the RAM, nor have I put on the heatsink, nor have I done the cabling. So I guess where we're going to continue today is we'll start with getting things in this top left corner hooked up, because once I put the heatsink on, I won't be able to reach in there. So that means getting the rear case fan and CPU power hooked up. Then I can put the heatsink on, then I can put the RAM on. We can hook up the cable, the front port umbilicals and USB stuff like that. And then we can do our very first test fire. It's very tempting for me to do some of this stuff off camera, but I want to save it for you guys. I want you to see that everything is real, that there's no rehearsal, there's no script, everything is live. And it has just been sitting on the counter. I've left it exactly the way it was. Whether or not you choose to believe me, I really don't care, but that's what it is. And so we're going to find out, if it boots, basically. Just like I do on every other video. The difference is that we had a big gap. But I don't want you to think in that gap I was doing something with relation to this. It's just stupid. If I was going to do that, I'd do it to get it done and get it out to the customer. I wouldn't keep it here and take it back apart. So anyway, let's get to doing that. And then we're going to put in the RTX 2080 Ti on here. Once we verified everything boots, we'll get Windows installed. This will be one of the last things we do. So I do need the RAM, and the RAM has that big cooler with it, which we'll see if that's going to fit. I got documentation to the case, which needs to go in the motherboard box. Now, let me move this out of the way. Everybody liked Linda's edit on the dead power supply. She did a really good job on that. So you've got her to thank for that edit. She just gets better and better with every edit. And Randy Johnson has contributed $5. Thank you, Randy. All right, so let's get a little cabling done here. I want to get rid of this cable, or not get rid of it, but take care of it. And that means removing the wire tie and putting a couple nylon zip ties on it, because once that large heatsink goes on, there won't be much room to get my hands in there. This is the time to do it. Most cable management, I'd say, save it till the end. But in this case, if I saved it to the end, I have to take it back apart to get to it. So I don't really change much with regards to the way it comes from the factory, only because when it's all said and done, it's not like it's really going to be inspected that closely for how level it is, do the loops meet, things like that. It don't really matter. But some people do care about stuff like that. So if you have that kind of time and you want to detail out your build like that, well, by all means, there's nothing wrong with having pride in the quality of your work. So we'll just put these two here. And I put two on to prevent the cable from bowing out. Like if I just put a cable tie in the middle, the cable spreads out on the ends, and it's not so neat anymore. It doesn't look as clean. But again, that's my personal take on it, and when you do cable management, you do it to the way you like it. And And that's going to go way up in this corner. There's a fan header on Gigabyte boards, on many of them. And that's going to go right up there. It only goes on one direction. Now the Corsair case comes with a 3-pin fan, and it's going to go on to a 4-pin fan header. And since Linda's in the chat room, if we can make a little quick tips out of, I think we might have done this already, about talking about the importance that customer support is, and that just because there's a product that's bad doesn't mean I'm not going to buy that company's products anymore. I will say, like if I get a bunch of EVGA power supplies that were DOA, like it was disproportionate, no matter how good the support is, I'm going to stop using them because now it's taking too much time. But every once in a while, it's fully expected. If you can get away with not having it happen for a long, long time, that's not normal. And just recognize that, eventually it's going to happen. If you build enough computers, you will eventually run into that with any manufacturer. And maybe that'll be a good quick tips to talk about things to consider when selecting parts, which is, again, not the cheapest, not the most expensive. You perhaps want the cheapest price for the best product, which involves reliability, availability, performance, warranty, and support. And those things combined should equal to the price. Tina McLaughlin, a very nice contribution, $25. Thank you, Tina. So with the fan out of the way, we can hook up the 8-pin CPU power supply. CPU power. Now here we're just using a very inexpensive EVGA 700 bronze or BR power supply. Very inexpensive, maybe one of the least inexpensive 80 plus power supplies that's 700 watts on the market. It's got a decent warranty. It's not great, it's decent. And you'll see it's not modular, but when we're not working with a case with a window, whether or not it's modular is not important. Cogjin just contributed £5 and sent you an e-gift card. Oh, very nice. Thank you, Cogjin. So all I want to do right now is just kind of separate out these cables. Used to be a bigger problem in the 90s where I would see people spend, 4 figures on their computer parts and then buy the cheapest power supply they can buy. And well, that's still a bit of a problem today. It's nowhere near the problem that it used to be. And it was a real shame to watch people do that to really good parts, just cheap out on the power supply. But I think as long as you're getting an 80 plus power supply, you'll be okay. But more importantly, if you get it from a company like EVGA or Corsair, in the unlikely event that something goes wrong, whether it's brand new, dead on arrival, or during the warranty period, that they're going to be there to take care of you. EVGA's got power supplies that go up to 10 years in warranty. Those power supplies do cost more. You get what you pay for. And that's buying something called peace of mind. And for some people, peace of mind has no value, and for other people, it's one of the most valuable things on the planet. So choose what's right for you. Here's our 8-pin CPU power cable. We're going to run that back here. And we'll bring it right up through here. Like that. The little clip goes towards the edge of the motherboard on these Gigabyte boards. And I'm going to make an attempt here to plug that in without the struggle I would have if that heatsink were in place. I should also mention there's an additional 4-pin CPU power connector here for added stability when overclocking. I don't build machines, well specifically this one, is not built to be overclocked. Well, a customer could do it anyway. I don't support that because I have other things to do. but there would be a different selection of parts for an overclocked machine. For example, a power supply that supported both those connectors, probably a liquid cooler, so they could achieve higher clocks, and a whole host of other ways that you could waste your money that I just, it's not a value to the customer in my opinion. So, and it's certainly difficult to keep me in business if I have to keep helping people get their computers running when they keep crashing for self-induced overclocking that was completely voluntary and elective. So I just would rather not let customers tell me how to invest my time. They can invest their time any way they want to. I wouldn't tell somebody they can't do it, but I will say if you have any problems, I'm not helping you with it because I have other things more important to do. If the computer was important, they wouldn't be doing that. I think I got that on there. Something we call mission critical. When a machine is mission critical, it means that it's absolutely critical that the machine is running and reliable and performs well. When we overclock, it's more like, I'm bored, I got nothing to do. Let me just see if I can, get this thing up a little higher. And that's great for them. It's not great for me because I got a mountain of work. Okay, our motherboard power cable, I can go ahead and just get that on there now. There we go. And then we'll get these front port umbilicals separated out here from the case. And once again, just take this time now to untangle everything, straighten all the cables out, make sure they're not woven in between each other, because that will make your cable management more difficult later on when everything's all wired up. Also, when things get really busy for me, sometimes I need to take a step back, and what I like to do is read, and it's been a while since I picked up a book. And I was looking on Amazon and found an old book that is right up my alley called The Masters of Doom. And it's about John Romero and John Carmack, the creators of the game Doom, how they changed an entire industry, created an industry. Shareware was their idea. This idea that you'd get a couple levels for free and beyond that you'd have to pay. Nobody had done that before. That was a brand new idea. First-person shooters to this level with these kind of graphics had never really been done, certainly not with that kind of gore. And the way this book starts, you can see I'm just barely through the book. But the way this book starts reminds me of my childhood. I think a lot of people don't realize the difficulty that we'll call ourselves the first generation with home computers, the amount that we suffered to follow our passions. I have no doubt that life gets easier for younger generations than the generations that came before them. And those generations think, oh, these kids today, they're lazy but no, they just have an easier life. John Carmack would go play video games, and his dad would see him playing video games at the pizza parlor. He'd see his bicycle parked outside, grab his bike, throw it in the back of the truck, grab him by his hair, throw him in the truck, and then beat him when he got home. I didn't quite have it that bad, but it was pretty bad. Non-supportive parents who didn't see the benefit of computers because there was no internet. They saw it as just a distraction that was a waste of time and wanted their kids to focus on studies and things that mattered. And so people like John Romero, John Carmack, myself, this whole generation went through hell to follow our passion of playing games. We sacrificed quarters at the arcades and mowed lawns and did whatever we could to earn another dollar so we can get some more tokens so we could play another game of Galaga or Donkey Kong. And if you're younger, if you're if you're below under 30, understand the sacrifices and the fight that the generation before you put up so that you can have what you want, so that you have the luxury of having the Xbox in the living room and having accepting parents that see the value in it. It was a difficult time. That transition from parents who did not, like my parents, didn't want me in tennis shoes. My father was told by a shoe salesman that tennis shoes will narrow your children's feet and that I should be wearing sort of like business shoes. And so they bought me like leather shoes that are nice shoes, like you'd go to a fancy party or something in. And one heel was larger than the other heel to offset a slight curvature in the spine. And those were my shoes. And they sent me to school so I could be teased and mocked and be made out to be different than everybody else. And that didn't last very long because I was rebellious and I was like, I'm not wearing them. And now, of course, tennis shoes are everywhere. And even glasses. Back in the day, eyeglasses were a medical device. They didn't have stylish frames. Everybody had the same frames. You wore them because you had to see. You didn't wear them for fashion. So this idea that somebody came up with different frames to make eyeglasses fashionable, that there are people now wearing glasses that don't have any lenses. They're just glass. They don't have any correction because it's fashionable. It's like a crutch being fashionable. It's a designer crutch. It's a medical device, so you can see, has become a fashion accessory. It's strange that I've seen that in my lifetime. And I think if you're under 30 years old, just take a minute to think about what life was like, that people didn't have these choices, and that people had to fight and scream and argue to do the things that they enjoy doing, to wear the shoes you want to wear, or to play the games you want to play. And I was just thinking about it the other day, and I thought, wow, that we've really come a long way in society with acceptance. And I'm sure with John Romero or John Carmack, I can't remember, one of them's worth like $18 million at this point. I think his parents' concerns about, having a stable career have been eased at this point. But you look at even Jeff Bezos and look at how he was brought up. He's adopted. Father had no relationship with him. And he's able to overcome all that, and now Amazon is a household name. And you can take advantage of that all day, but if you don't understand the struggle and the fight, even the press hammered on Bezos, hammered him constantly. Elon Musk gets it constantly, and yet Tesla's stock is outrageous right now. So I guess the message here is whatever you're trying to do, if you truly believe in it, don't let anybody get in your way. And if you're lucky enough to see society embrace it, then know that you were a part of that revolution. You were a part of that change. And so I didn't really think about it, but the same parents who were threatening to take my computer away from me, the computer I paid for with my own paper route money, are the same parents asking me for computer help today. So when you think about it that way, I don't want to say I won, because that's not right, but I will say that I knew in my heart that was the future. I just couldn't explain how or why. And I feel justified that what I did was right, and I was fighting for the right cause, because here we are. Hugh Wong has contributed $2. He says, it's nice to relate. We grew up during the same period. Yeah, absolutely. I think people that are, anywhere from 45 to 65 probably understand that era of the generation of parents we had and where they came from. And you know, their life was easier than their parents. And so we should all be grateful that we have easier lives. That's what it's about. It's about life becoming easier. However, we should also appreciate those who fought. Not that I was doing it for anybody else but myself, but it turns out there were a lot of people like me. You know, John Romero and John Carmack were a lot, as I'm reading this book, I'm like, wow, these guys went through a lot of the same thing I went through. And how I wish I could have been a part of that bigger movement. In fact, even on the back of the book, there was a, I forget what they call it, just a little quote on the back. It says, are you brainy, gifted, deeply alienated? Have you ever wanted to be a multimillionaire who transformed a major industry? Then Masters of Doom is the book for you. And I thought, that sounds good. Who doesn't want to change the world? Walked uphill both ways in the snow with my little brother on my back. It starts to sound like that. But who'd have known? Who'd have known in 1982 I could be standing in my kitchen broadcasting to the world in HD? Reverend John O'Toole's contributed $5. He says, if I have 3 monitors, do they all need to be at the same resolution, or can they be different? They can all be different. They can even be different orientations. All right. So with the cabling hooked up, or at least the motherboard power cabling hooked up, I guess I can go ahead and put the CPU on, which means it's time for the thermal compound application, which I know all of you love to watch. Oh, look, Bill Leatherland joins us. Hey, Bill, welcome in. Consider Bill one of those friends I've never met in person, but I hope to one day, and I always smile when I see him in the chat room. Let me see if I can fix the focus on this so it won't keep adjusting. Give me just a minute here. That should, where's my manual focus? There it is. Except I got to do it when I'm not standing in front of the camera. There we go. All right. So there's a close-up of our CPU installed, and I've got the thermal compound, which is included with the cooler from Scythe. And I like to use a nitrile glove. Now, I didn't always do this. I used to spread thermal compound with like a flat blade, like a screwdriver or something like that, but I would clean with rubbing alcohol before I started and after I was finished. And the reason is you don't want to use rubber or latex gloves because they can conduct electricity. And while these are very inexpensive, they weren't always inexpensive. Nitrile gloves didn't always exist. So back in the early days when I was building computers, if you wanted to buy rubber gloves, it wasn't a good idea. Anything used for medical was very cost prohibitive. Because of our world economy, things have become much less expensive, including medical grade gloves, which is essentially what these are, with these nitrile gloves. They don't conduct electricity, they're very affordable. And so just like anything else, things change and we adapt to those changes so we don't have to work as hard. And so what I like to do is just put a dab of thermal compound on the chip. And admittedly, sometimes I get a little too aggressive with this. You want to be able to cover the chip 100% as though you were finger painting. Just treat it like paint. You don't want to be able to see through it. You know, a nice thick coat of paint. And if it's looking like it's super thick, you've probably got too much on there. So I'm trying to be a little more conservative with my application method of thermal compound, though that's not the worst thing in the world to put too much on. It's kind of wasteful and it's not beneficial. So just take it easy with the thermal compound there. Now there's lots of other ways that you may choose to apply your thermal compound, and You don't need anybody's approval or permission. You may do that any way you choose to do that. That's how I choose to do it. The rest of this thermal compound, this will go in the bag with the rest of the unused cooler parts. There's probably another 2 or 3 applications. I'd say 2 more applications of thermal compound in that tube for future use. Let's put autofocus back on there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the case flat so that I can put this heatsink on. I would very much like to put it on where you can watch, but it's just too difficult to keep it in place. I don't have 4 hands. So what I'm going to do is just lay this flat. And when you build your own computer, this is how you should be doing it. I'm oftentimes doing things not in an optimal manner in order for you to be able to see. Here we've got this little protective plastic over the bottom of the heatsink that keeps it free of any contaminants. And you'll notice there's 1 screw that's located under the heatsink and 1 screw off to the edge. This screw that's off to the edge, that goes towards your RAM. And you want to avoid touching this. Not, the plastic was there so that it didn't get anything on it, which includes your fingerprints. Just set this on top of the CPU. And then we're going to use the included screwdriver that Scythe gives us with the cooler because it has the right length on it to tighten those screws down. So there's our driver. And let's see, this one's super easy to get to. Only give it just start it into the mounting hole. Don't turn it too much, because if you turn it too much, it makes the other side too difficult to get started because they're spring tensioned. And as you turn them down, the spring tightens. And what we want to do is just go back and forth, tightening these screws about equally on each side. And when I say about equally, you don't have to be precise. We're not mixing rocket fuel, okay? Just use your best judgment. At the end of the day, as long as it's on there secure and you've alternated between sides, you did it right. You can rest assured. You don't have to stay up at night wondering. And these screws on the Scythe coolers, I like that they come to a complete and dead stop, so you don't have to worry about over-tightening them. And when it's done, of course, it's going to look just like that. Daryl says, with today's chip being self-boosting on 1 or more cores, would it be a good idea to put in that 4-pin CPU connector? No. See, the actual engineering designs do not call for an additional 4-pin CPU connector. That's something the individual motherboard manufacturers choose to add. It is not recommended by Intel. The chipsets and those designs that come from Intel are designed to run the CPU at spec. If you're going to exceed the recommended voltages for which those chips were designed and engineered to run under, then you may have undercurrent issues, voltage issues, and stability issues would result. Therefore, the manufacturers decide that we can add an additional power to compensate for that loss when people utilize the parts in a way that they were not engineered or designed to be run. So if you're not going to overclock and you plug in that 4-pin additional power connector, you will see absolutely no difference whatsoever other than the price you spent on the power supply and the additional work required to wire it up. It will make absolutely 0 difference. The only time that additional 4-pin power connector comes into play is when you are driving the CPU beyond its engineering design. So when you know better than the engineers and you want to outsmart them to try and get away with something like, oh, look, I got an extra 4 megahertz, you can then also take the risk and the expense of the more expensive power supply, the risk of reliability, the risk of damaging parts, all in the name of overclocking. If you're not overclocking it, it's completely redundant and unnecessary. So I want to remind you, I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. So please give me the benefit of the doubt that if I thought it would benefit you to have it, that I would say so. And what's weird is I'll be people advising me who have no verifiable history, nor do they explain why they would second guess Like, what I'm saying is incorrect. And that kind of bothers me a little bit. It's sort of like you're oversimplifying my job. You're sort of suggesting that, you may not mean to, right? But it kind of comes across as that somehow at nearly 30 years in business, I'm setting my customers up for failure and giving bad advice. Usually companies that do that don't stick around very long, maybe a couple of years and they're gone. So, at the very least, you just might consider, I must be doing something right. I might be doing everything wrong, but I must be doing enough right to keep me in business. Now, if you choose to hook that connector up and you choose not to believe me, that makes no difference in my life. I'm simply volunteering my experience with you, and if you choose to value that, or you don't, it doesn't change my experience, nor does it change my ability to satisfy my customers and keep customers coming back. So I just would appreciate if you would keep that in mind. So on the fan, we're going to put this on. We've got air drawing in here and coming out there. And we want this fan to blow air through the heatsink and out towards this fan, which is also drawing in air and blowing it. All our airflow, we want it all moving in the same direction. So that's going to go on just like this because I want the power cable as close to the power header on the motherboard as possible. Thomas wants to know if he can buy a solid copper heatsink. It's really just the core that needs to be copper. The fins don't really benefit much from being copper. But if you're interested in the ultimate cooling, then what you'd want is a platinum heatsink. Copper transfers heat better than aluminum, but silver transfers heat better than copper. Gold transfers heat better than silver. Platinum transfers heat better than gold. Do you want to spend $80,000 on cooling for your $400 CPU? Copper typically isn't made because it's just it's cost prohibitive to make a full heatsink out of copper. So, while somebody somewhere might make one, you should not require it. In other words, the engineers who develop and design these chips at Intel do so to run within the specifications and the cooling that they have, for lack of a better word, done the math on. Requiring anything above and beyond that suggests to me that you are not running the chip as it was designed. Now that's your choice. That's your choice. I can't stay in business running a chip the way it wasn't designed to run. I would just quickly go out of business. I would have upset customers and lots of warranty calls, and that's simply not a sustainable, profitable business. It's just not possible. You can't do it. Unless you're charging like $10,000 for the computer and you're only offering like so many support calls. It's a downward spiral, man. It's sort of just sort of a hobbyist activity, to think like that. Like, in other words, I've never had a customer go, what kind of metal is my heatsink made of? No customer in the history of my business has ever asked me that question. It's never happened. There are people that want to use their computers to do as much work as possible, where they're working and not waiting on the computer to process the work they've done, that they need it to do, so that they can generate more work, which generates more money, which means that they live a happier, better life because they're bringing in more income. And then the other side of it is you've got people that have nothing to do and they just want to push the boundaries of the capabilities of the CPU. And when they come in here and ask me questions regarding that hobbyist activity, you'll find that my attitude is always one of what I'm exhibiting now, which is, what a waste of time. Like, there's so many YouTube channels that talk about that. Why would you come here for that? With the heatsink on, I can now hook up the front port umbilicals. We've got that G connector in here. I'd like to use it on this build. And it's in one of these bags somewhere. Here it is. Oh, I guess I can put the screwdriver back. I can put the thermal compound in the CPU bag. Rick said a bunch of plumbing work done in my house. Lots of scrap copper the plumber was going to take away. I said, no, that's staying with me. Well, yeah, the recycling value of copper makes it worth taking it to the recycling yard, because you know that's what the plumber was going to do with it. That's free money. I had a garbage can full of cans, crushed cans, and I had these guys mowing my lawn, and I said, you know, I was trying to help them out, you know. I said, look, if you want those cans, you can take them. They misunderstood, and they took my entire trash can and never came back. I didn't say you could have the can. Now where am I supposed to put more cans? I guess I needed to be clearer. They took the whole can, never came back. All right, for this part I need to get some glasses. I decided to embrace my inner nerd and get some nerd glasses, but these are just for reading, but there's a very, very slight astigmatism correction in them. So they're like super, super clear, so I really like them. So, well, actually, sorry, that's my nerd move. That's a nerd thing to do this. Well, actually, and then you correct somebody. But you preface it by saying, well, actually, while pushing up your glasses. Don't be that guy. Please, please don't be that guy. There's somebody out there right now going, well, actually, that's not what nerds do. All right, let's see what I got. Okay, power LED. Let's see if we can zoom you in on this here and give you a little closer look at what I'm doing. So this is the G connector, and we're just going to use this side of it. Here it says power LED and power switch with the positive cable. On these LEDs, the positive cable has got to be lined up. On switches, it doesn't matter. So they want the positive cable towards the edge and the negative cable right beside it, and we'll slide that right into its connector here. Come on. Come on. Come on. And it's okay to wiggle and adjust things, but what you don't want to do is force anything. If it's not going in easily, as you can see, I've taken it back out, realigned. We're going to go back in and try it again. Rinse and repeat as necessary. It will lock into place. Grab the next cable. What's this one say? This says power switch. Perfect. That goes right beside the power LED, right above where it says PW. Again, positive and negative don't matter on switches, only on LEDs. And it should click in, and you see I'm pulling on the cable to make sure that it's in there. Now we're going to flip it around, and we're going to go to the back side of these same two cables, where it says hard drive LED, and then reset switch. So let's grab one of these, see which one we get. I'll run it through here. This says reset switch, so that's going to go, oh, gotta turn this the right direction, Carey. Reset switch, right like that. Come on, there it is. And then the last one, of course, is going to be our hard drive LED. And you don't need a crystal ball to understand the power of deduction. And the hard drive LED, the positive cable again has to go towards the edge, which means on a Corsair case like this one, the words are going to be facing towards me. There's a little small tiny triangle embedded into the plastic that indicates positive. However, if you were to get it backwards, the only result would be an LED that will not light up. It won't cause any damage. And it's one of the things I always look for, even though it's not critical to the operation of the computer. Having the power light up and having the hard drive LED light up are a diagnostic that I use when I'm trying to figure out if a computer's turned on or locked up. Typically, a locked up computer, the hard drive LED won't be flashing as though it's doing something. So with that done, we'll bring that back. My nerd glasses can go right over there. Nothing wrong with being a nerd. And we'll bring this cable in through here. Yeah, just don't be one of those, well, actually nerds, and you'll be just fine. And then let me zoom back in, and you'll see right down here, right down there. This connector is the one we're going to be plugging into. And we want the cables on the left side plugged in just like this. I just kind of wiggle it and push it on. And that hooks up our front port panel. Now our front port panel is made up of, let me just turn this way. This is our front port panel right here. And that's made up of our front port USB, our front port audio, reset, and power switch. And we still have to hook up the USB and power switch next. So if I just bring this back a little bit here, this is the front port USB. It's a funky looking connector, and if we just bring that down through, take a look at where it's going to go, right about there. Looks about, well, that's our connector right there. So I will bring it into this hole here. It only goes in one direction, so I'll make sure that the little notch will line up with the notch in the connector and plug it straight on. And then finally, we have the front port audio connector. That's the front port microphone and headphone jack. And that's going to go around right through this. In this case, the power supply is short enough it leaves a little opening, and I'm going to just steal that. It's not really what it's for, but it'll work because that's got to go down into this bottom corner of all motherboards, or at least all ATX style boards. And then there's a pin missing, which will let us know which direction this has to go on, which in this case, the missing pin looks like on the bottom. And then I'll just push the slack through there. So we've got everything but the RAM installed, which I can do next. Are you guys hearing music, or is that just me? I want to make sure I don't have a neighbor blaring their music that could result in a copyright strike against me. I might have to say something. So RAM, let's get the RAM installed. This is kind of an expensive kit because it comes with a little cooler. That's why it's so thick. This is Corsair Vengeance. As you can see, it's 64 gigs of RAM made up of 4 sticks that are 16 gigs each, running at 3200 megahertz. And it's all sealed up, so let's get some cutters. Well, my blade, let's get that open. Right, like so. Let's see what's in here. How's that for packaging RAM? Fancy. So there's our 4 sticks of RAM. And then there's a RAM cooler, which looks like this. That's just going to be a problem, but all right, whatever. And then there's some more heatsink here for something, and an adapter for something else, and another adapter and a 4-pin to 3-pin adapter. No, that's 3-pin to 3-pin. This must be for limiting the speed of the fan so it doesn't get too loud. I'm guessing you can change the color from red. See this red part? I guess you can change it to blue, or you can change it to silver. I thought these were adapters, but they're just there for looks. And nothing is black. This whole case is black. The motherboard's black. So red, blue, or silver is not going to match no matter what. And if you ask me, 2 colors that go best together are black and red. So we'll keep it red. Let's go ahead and get some RAM put in here. I'm not going to worry about this heatsink install for the RAM because it's, first of all, unnecessary. And second of all, it's absolutely unneeded for our test post and to install Windows and to make sure everything we've got done so far is working properly. And each one of these RAM modules has a piece of clear plastic over the company logo, which I can then remove somehow. There it is. And we only have 4 RAM sockets. The RAM only goes in one direction. Let's make sure we've opened up these retention modules here on the RAM. And it's easiest to start in and work your way out so that you don't paint yourself into a corner with trying to get the RAM installed and barricading yourself in. So once you've got the RAM in there, in fact, I think I want to lay the case down to do this because I don't want it to install it unevenly. I'm going to push down on each corner, and you'll hear it click into position. And then I need to repeat that with the 3 remaining modules. Okay, so yeah, this neighbor's music seems like it's getting louder. Nothing screams Happy President's Day like Mexican mariachi music. But don't worry, it's my favorite song. I'm going to start singing along to it. Happy President's Day, amigo. That's not racist. That's just being observant. You have to appreciate the irony. This is not Cinco de Mayo. But if it is, I should play some AC/DC. You know, to celebrate. Because, you know, that makes sense. All right. Third one's going in. There it is. And we'll go to the last one right here, and then we can test it out, fire it up. You guys aren't hearing that music? Good. I can't say I've had to deal with that for a long time. Usually what I do, I have a pretty loud stereo here. I like to open the windows, point the speakers at them, and crank the volume all the way up with something I think they're going to hate. Put on a little Megadeth or, I don't know, Combi Christ, something like that. Little Marilyn Manson. Make sure they can hear it. See how they like it. Let them know I can do that too. I just choose not to, but I want them to know I can. I've got to say, lately, been watching The Fix live in concert, and I cannot believe how good they sound. And for those of you unfamiliar, they were a popular band in the 1980s. And the lead singer is very philosophical. Even the things he talks about in between the songs is very interesting. And I don't know, it's kind of reawakened my appreciation for their music. In fact, I think I like them more today than I ever liked them before. Like maybe I wasn't mature enough, or I just wasn't getting what they were singing about. I just liked the rhythms and the unique sounds they create. But listening to them live, because I've seen a lot of bands that sound terrible live, they sound perfect live. He sings it exactly the way it was played on the radio, which means it's super easy to sing along with. You know, he's not improvising a lot or going off rhythm. And he's still got a good voice. What's his name? Cy Kernum, I think his name is. But if you look up any of the videos from the Fix that are live from 2019, I can't believe how good they sound. Like as much as I like a band called The Cars, they sounded awful live. Like there was apparently a lot of studio correction being done. And there's nothing more disappointing than going to see your favorite band and they sound like, you know, a wedding band or something, you know. Steve Warrington says, I love Megadeth. Great. Well, then I'll crank it up for you. Okay, let's see. That gets everything hooked up we need. I don't need the front fan hooked up. I don't need the fan on the RAM hooked up. I do not need the optical drive hooked up yet. So we're good to go for our very first test fire here, which means I have to hook up your monitor at home. I need to borrow your monitor. Yeah, yours. We've got, 876 people watching, so we'll hook 876 monitors up to this thing. Why not? Let me grab an HDMI cable from back here and get it plugged into the back of your screen. Let's go to the built-in video, which is right there. And we'll run that down here. And we'll come around here to the capture card. We've got our power cable. We'll get this plugged in. And then I need a keyboard and mouse, which I have right over here. And they operate off of one dongle, which I like. Right there's the dongle. We'll turn the mouse on. And we'll plug into one of the black USB ports. I don't want to waste a USB 3.0 port on a keyboard or a mouse dongle. And that should be all we need to test fire to verify if what we've done is working or if we have a bad power supply. What do you think the odds of that happening again are? You want to place your bets? Okay. Let's see. Let's go to camera 2, and we'll put camera 1 in the corner here. Just like that. That's good enough. Just stick me right up in there. Okay, here we go. I'm going to make a big deal out of this like I did before because that worked out so well for me last time. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Wait, did I switch the switch on? No. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Power. Well, fans are turning. See fans turning. Good, good. No signal yet, but that's okay. Be patient. I'm going to be patient. I want you to watch because you may see those fans stop and then start again. Yeah, I can see it kind of slowed down there for a minute. Just continue to be patient, and hopefully, there it is. We get the post screen. And it may shut off, you know, there it goes. It just turned off again. You'll see the fan probably slow down. It starts up again. And on your first boot, this is all very normal. And we just sit this out. It'll take a few moments. And then what I'll do is check for a BIOS update for this board. Okay. So it's powered off again. Again, I'm not touching anything. I'm just kind of standing here waiting for it to eventually go into the BIOS or give me a no bootable device found error message, something along those lines. This should be the last time it does that. Now, this is like 4 times. Here we go. There it is. We're running BIOS version F11. If you look in the upper left corner where it says information, it says the name of our motherboard, Z390 Aorus Pro F11. And if I just type that exact model into Google, if I go right here on my browser, go to google.com, and then I'm going to type in Z390 Aorus Pro, the very first link Google search results come back with is from Gigabyte, and it's the product page for that motherboard. If I click on the support button on the product page, not above at the top, there's a different support. That's for general support. I want specific support to that product. And all manufacturers, MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, ASRock, they all do that. They have 2 supports options, product page support, or support for the item on the product page, and then general support above it. And I want to look under the latest BIOS version to see what's available, and it shows F12D, which is F11 was released, appears on the 28th of October last year, 2019, and December 18th is the release of F12D. I'm going to go ahead and grab F12D right now and download it. I've already got it. It's a zip file which I extract, and then in the extraction I look for a file called .12D. That's the extension, period 12D. That's the BIOS file that I need. I don't need any of the other files that are contained in the zip that I downloaded. And I'm going to grab my BIOS flash drive, which is just an empty FAT32 formatted 2 gig flash drive. And I'm going to copy the BIOS file onto this blank flash drive here on the streaming computer, because obviously that works and has internet. So we'll just copy and then paste. And then we can extract the flash drive and plug it into this machine. There we go. So let's see if I can see what I'm doing. So right here on the back of the machine, if you're looking at me in the top right corner, I can plug into any available USB port and let that sit for a minute. So it gives the computer a moment to recognize it. And then we can go to, see right now we're in easy mode. I want to go to, let's see, there's advanced. Oh, there's QFlash. Let's go to QFlash, update BIOS. It sees the file right there on the flash drive. Double click it. Oh, I guess just hit the right arrow. Are you sure you want to update? Yes. It verifies the file. It says, okay, it looks good. You want to update the backup BIOS? Yes, I do. Press to start. Now, once again, this is a hands-off deal. You just got to be patient and wait for it to complete. I've done so many BIOS updates live, I've never ever had one fail, ever. You can look back at all my videos going back 10 or 12 years here on YouTube, and in every time I show and demonstrate the BIOS update procedure, never ever has there been an exception. It always works. So this fear of updating BIOSes, it's something that comes from an attitude from 20 plus years ago when BIOS updates were a little sketchy. The sketchy part was really getting the wrong BIOS update. It was so easy, and it would let you flash the wrong BIOS. These days, it won't even let you do it if it's the wrong BIOS. So that sort of fear is over. The worst thing that can happen right now is a power outage, but even that would not be catastrophic. With Gigabyte boards and a dual BIOS, it would just restore from the backup BIOS, and you'd still be good. So again, all the anxiety, all the fear is totally unfounded in modern day electronics or modern day motherboards. It's just something that's carried over from the old days, and it usually comes from older people. Even if somebody younger is saying it's because someone older told them that, you know, or they read it somewhere online and it was written by an older person. These are, like I said, life is getting easier, folks. The things we used to do, we used to have a reason for doing those things, like defragmenting a hard drive. we don't have a reason for doing that anymore. So basically, it's about embracing today instead of holding on to yesterday. And I sort of have to battle with that a little bit here on YouTube when people want to challenge what I'm doing because they're still living in 1997. And it can be a little frustrating. So be aware that some of the advice you may be seeing online may be dated. Even though it may be recent advice, it's the person who taught them. But some people say you should wait until you need a BIOS update. I prefer to not have a problem that a BIOS update fixes. I'm about avoiding problems. I'm not about waiting for them and reacting. See, you can choose to be a reactive person. That's very stressful, and it always happens at the worst possible time. I choose to be proactive. So that's just my choice, and it's something that for my business is critical so that I don't go out of business in warranty work. You know, updating a customer's BIOS should have been done right away. If it causes a problem, the customers will expect me to fix it for free. So I'm just trying to prevent problems. It's hard to measure the success of that, other than the fact I'm still in business. So now you'll see the machine is automatically rebooting itself. I'm still not touching anything. I'm just letting the machine do its thing, and I will continue to not touch it until we get back into the BIOS again. That's when you know the machine's done. Some machines will reboot and continue the BIOS update process. So you just have to be patient. And by patient, it really only amounts to a matter of a couple of minutes. It's not like we're waiting hours or days. So the amount of patience required is fairly minimal. All the flashing you're seeing is all normal. And now we've come back up into the BIOS. And if you look at that top left corner, you'll see the BIOS version now represents 12D, whereas before it was at 11. That means our BIOS update was successful. And we don't need to change anything in the BIOS. At this point, we're still not sure everything's running and happy. And we don't want to tune it and optimize it until we know it works basically, right? And when it works basically, then we can make it work more advanced. So with that, let me turn the machine off, and I will erase this flash drive because I will never need that file again. It's one and done, and it'll be ready for the next BIOS update that I can put on that flash drive. Here I've got my Windows 10 boot media USB. I've got a video that explains how you can make one of these completely for free. It's all legal. And we're going to get Windows 10 installed on here. Before I go any further with the build, I want to make sure that Windows 10 will install and that it works properly. Because if it doesn't, I will only have this many parts to diagnose, not all the other stuff. So again, without touching anything, I haven't made any changes to the BIOS. All I'm doing is turning the machine on. You'll see it automatically boots to that flash drive. And I will click Next to begin the installation process and hit Install Now. And then it's going to come up and ask it asks for a product key. I always leave this field blank, and right down here in fine print it says I don't have a product key. I always click that. When you enter your product key in there, it automatically knows what version of Windows your product key is for. I only buy and install Windows 10 Pro products, so I don't need to wonder what the product is I paid for. I know it's going to be Windows 10 Pro. So if I install that now, as long as I put a Windows 10 Pro key in later, it'll activate with no problem. You cannot activate Windows 10 Home with a Windows 10 Pro key, nor can you activate Windows 10 Pro with a Windows 10 Home key. You can upgrade Home, I think, with a Pro key, now that I think about it. Let's do a custom install. It only sees one drive. That's the Samsung 970 Evo Plus we put in there. That's what we put in there, right? It's been a few days. I can't remember. Now, the Windows installation is going to automatically partition that new solid-state drive. It's going to format all those partitions it's creating, and then it's going to install Windows 10. And again, this is all hands-off. Just let it do its thing. And while it's working, I can check and make sure my LEDs are lit up. I see the power LED is on. and the hard drive LED is flashing. Those things are working. Clearly, I know the power switch works. So at some point, if I want to test the reset switch, I can do that. And I think it's time for another soda. That's what I think. And this one looks like it's getting a little low. You know what I've got? Luke Greeny has sent me some bottles of Coke that have customized labels. Where's my bottle opener? That's not it. Here it is. Coca-Cola with the custom message on the back. If it'll focus. There it is. Carey Holzman, the friendly tech. See, I can be friendly, especially if you come bearing Coke. Thank you, Luke. Thanks for the Coke. Well, we're waiting for Windows 10 to install. If any of you have any questions at this point, I'd be certainly happy to address any questions you have. Be nice to see a 5.25 inch SSD. I've got a couple of 5.25 inch SSDs. OCD used to make them. OCZ. Freudian slip. They weren't big. Well, they were, some of the first generation solid state drives. So they were 120 gigs maybe. But inside is still the small components of a 2.5 inch SSD. Just put it on a bigger circuit board. It's not rocket science. Looks like I might have missed a few contributions in the chat. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Steve Devine contributed $2. He says, thanks for another great vid as always. Hugh Wong contributed $2. Reverend John O'Toole contributed $5. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for supporting the channel, keeping me free of sponsorships. So you know I'm not here pushing products on you, other than my own products like the Windows 10 Optimizer tool and the Windows 10 Netfix tool that I have worked with Nick over at D7X Tech to help me be more efficient in my business. And we've made those tools available to you. The Optimizer is on sale this month for $7 until the end of February. And the links for these items are in the video notes below the video. Will a faster SSD storage drive bottleneck a slower SSD boot drive? I think you got it the other way around. So it depends on how you use the drives. So the drives will only work at the maximum performance of the drive or the connector. And if you're loading something at boot up time that's on the secondary faster drive, then the secondary faster drive isn't going to be any faster. But if you're already booted up to your desktop and all you want to do is, it's already loaded and you want to pull something off your secondary drive, then it'll transfer at whatever speeds the secondary drive and the controller you've plugged into are capable of. Whichever one is slower. Typically, you want your faster drive to be your boot drive because that's the one that you're going to notice it. Mostly on a secondary drive, you don't notice much speed difference at all. So we're going to finish the Windows 10 install here. We've got US region, so we'll click yes. It's a US keyboard, so I will click yes on that. I don't want a secondary language on my keyboard. I'm not going to connect to the network right now, so I click the little fine print in the corner twice, because Microsoft needs to hear no twice. This is going to Mark. Geez, I hope it's Mark with a K. Oh, wrong keyboard, Carey. Mark. There we go. I don't set passwords up. That's for customers to do if they want to do that. And I don't want to set up Cortana. They can do that too. You got to tell it twice. And then we're going to turn everything off but location. I like to leave location settings on because it helps with setting the time zone automatically. And like you want to find a restaurant near you or something like that, you want to Google that. It uses your IP address to determine your general area, not your specific area. And you can type in, pizza places near me in Google search, and it'll pull up places around you. If you've disabled location settings, then you'll have to manually say pizza places near Phoenix, Arizona, or and that's a big region to cover. I suppose you could also use your zip code, which could get around that as well. Some people are a little more paranoid and schizophrenic than others, so I leave that to the individual user to decide. Ultimately, I just set it up the way I set it up for all clients, which is to make it as convenient as possible, to reduce the odds of anybody calling me for some avoidable reason. And now this is going to finalize the Windows 10 install, at which point I'll be able to plug it in and grab our updates. Let me see if I've missed any other questions in the chat room while we're waiting here. Is this Windows 10 1909? Yes, I will only install the latest version of Windows 10. I am not one of those conspiracy theorists who thinks they know better than everybody else and insists that the latest thing is the worst thing. Those are very dangerous people in the world we live in today, where it's very easy to get exploited through viruses and malware, as well as incompatibilities with drivers and software, because they're refusing to inoculate themselves. They're basically modern day anti-vaxxers when it comes to their operating system and updates. I do not condone, nor do I get on board with people who choose to do things that are more harmful using the justification that doing the thing everybody else is doing with regards to PC security is more harmful, even though their avoidance of it is more harmful. And so we do tend to live in a culture and a society today where when people say things, they seem to think they're changing reality. It's very strange to live in a world, because that wasn't the way the world was when I was growing up. But I don't want you to be infected by them. They're very contagious, and I don't want to run my business de-infecting people. That's not what I got into business for. So whenever you see me install any program, I always use the latest version of everything. Glenn Davies has contributed $2 Australian. He says, greetings everyone. I have sponsored my own arrival. Right on, nothing wrong with that. All right. People asking about what parts are good. Can't tell you what parts are good. All parts are good. You have to decide what parts are good for you based on your budget. I can't tell you that because I don't know you. It's like saying what haircut is good for $15, or what menu item at this restaurant with 27 items is good for $12. You're going to ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers. It's important you do your own research. If you're one of those kind of people who thinks there's only one best, there's only one good, then you should buy Apple products, because Apple will make those decisions for you. The point of the PC world is to individualize your computer for your specific needs and your specific budget, and there's no way anybody on the internet can tell you what your needs and budget are. Let me grab an Ethernet cable, and we can get some Windows updates going on this new build. Let's see, here we go. done with the flash drive for now. Let's get that out of there. Plug this in right here. And I know there's an end to this cable somewhere. There it is. We'll bring this around over here. Very good. And let's see. Oh, now it wants me to create a Microsoft account again. So once again, in fine print in the lower left corner, we're going to tell Microsoft to leave us alone. So we'll hit skip for now. And now we can go to Windows Update. Whether or not I go to Windows Update or not, it's already downloading updates in the background. That's why you're going to see numerous updates fail, because it's going to be trying to install them twice, right? Once with me manually checking, and then once with it doing it automatically. Don't panic about that. That's perfectly normal. Carey, I have the same motherboard. I want to ask you, sometimes when I boot my PC, one fan in the case won't spin and doesn't even show in the BIOS. Try changing the fan. If that doesn't work, then you should replace the motherboard with an RMA. Is this autofocusing? It is. Peter Laycock has contributed $20. Hey, thank you, Peter. Thanks for all of your support. What about PC builds they list in PC magazines? Well, the thing about PC magazines is they are written probably 2 months before publication. So if we look at, let's say, Maximum PC Magazine, I've got the latest edition here. On the back page of Maximum PC Magazine, they'll list 3 different recommended builds for budget, mid-range, and high-end. So if we look at the builds, you'll see they've got recommended parts for budget and mid-range on this page. And then on the final page, they'll do their high-end build along with talking about a product that they think is worthy of consideration. But so here's where it gets a little confusing. This is the February edition of Maximum PC Magazine, February 2020. This arrives in January, which means it was probably written in November. All the articles were probably assigned to the editors, to the writers, at some point in early November or late October to say this is the subject of February's magazine, and you do your research, and this is our theme, and this is what you write. I know because I've written for the magazines. If you Google me, you'll see I've written for Smart Computing. I've written for, oh my gosh, there's so many magazines. And they would tell me, like, this month we're going to talk about cleaning a PC, so you need to write an article about that. And the magazine would come out between 2 to 3 months after the article is written. So when you look at the parts list recommendations here, it's not that they're bad parts list recommendations, but print takes so long, between the manufacturing, printing, mailing, and the time you read it, that the parts would probably be slightly different if you asked them today, right now. And if you're watching this video tomorrow, that could change too. So for the budget PC, they're recommending a Bitfenix Nova TG case, which they have at $70. A Corsair 450 watt CX white power supply. White is the 80 plus rating of $50. They're recommending the MSI B450M Pro M2 V2 motherboard at $75. An AMD Ryzen 5 2600 is $120. An EVGA GTX 1660 Super Black 6 gig edition, $230. 8 gigs of Patriot's Viper Steel Series at 3200 MTS at $38. A 120 gigabyte ADATA SU650 SATA 3 drive for $23. Combined with a 1 terabyte Seagate mechanical hard drive for $30. And using Ubuntu Desktop Linux 18.04.3 LTS 64-bit for $15 with a total cost of $651. This would not be what I would recommend, but I guess it depends what you want to do with the machine. On the mid-range, they're recommending the Fractal Design Meshify C with a 500-watt EVGA 500 Bronze 80 Plus. ASRock X570 Phantom Gaming 4 with a Ryzen 5 3600X with the AMD Wraith Spire cooler included. They're recommending the Radeon RX 5700 8GB graphics card with 16 gigs of the Patriot Viper 4 Blackout at, again, 3200 MTS. 500 gig Sabrent Rocket M.2 PCIe NVMe SSD for $110. The same 1 terabyte mechanical storage from Seagate for $30, and Windows 10 Home 64-bit for $100 for the price of $1158. So we went from $651 on budget to $1158 mid-range. So that, what's budget in mid-range? They're defining those numbers. You and I are not. So when we go to turbo or high-end, they're recommending the NZXT H700i case with the 850-watt Corsair 80 plus gold power supply, an Asus X399A with Threadripper 2950X chip, cooled by a Cooler Master Liquid ML360 RGB, utilizing a GeForce RTX 2080 Super Ventus 8 gig from MSI for $720. 32 gigs of G.Skill Sniper X series RAM at 3600 MTS, that's $137. 1 terabyte Gigabyte Aorus Gen 4 NVMe M.2 SSD is $210. Whew, for 1 terabyte, that's a lot of money. Let's see, then they're installing 2 3 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drives with Windows 10 Home 64-bit. Total cost, $2,750. Now the question is that a value today? Right? Remember, they wrote that article 2 months ago, minimum 2 months ago. So it's really hard to say if you should be following those lists. Those parts are all compatible and they all work well together, but are they still the best recommended value? Again, each person is unique. Each person has their own budget. Each person needs the machine for their own needs, and specifically, if you just say gaming, it depends what games. So they're very generic, and I still want to say, if you're of that mindset, and I mean this with all sincerity, just go buy yourself a pre-built computer or go buy an Apple. If you're not willing to do the research to uniquely make a computer yours, then there's no point. You're missing the whole point of building your own computer. We're not building computers because it's something to do. Building computers comes along with making something that's uniquely yours that fits your unique needs and budget. If you don't know what you need and you don't know how to decide, and you want somebody else to decide that for you, there's plenty of pre-built machines to choose from. I need to remind some people I don't sell computers. I only build them. So any price list that you see in the video notes is placed there because people watch the videos and they say, hey, what parts did you use? And so I will just grab all the parts lists from Amazon, so whatever Amazon is charging. I don't sell the parts. I don't care where you buy the parts. If I don't put the parts list in there, then people go, well, what motherboard did you use? What RAM did you use? Then when I put the parts list in there, you get some jerkwagon that comes in and goes, you can do that cheaper. I never put it up there to say this is the cheapest place to buy the parts. I never said that. Then you have people that, they come in as though they've paid for the video, or someone pointed a gun at their head and said, watch the video. If they don't like the video, if they don't agree with the video, they can just leave. If they refuse to exhibit normal societal behavior that they would in everyday life here online, then they're going to be banned from the chat room. And it's just a shame that people are so quick to demonize others by exposing their own ignorance because they failed to ask questions to fully understand that which they did not understand. So I appreciate my mods taking care of some of these people in the chat room who are social justice warriors when there's nothing unjust happening here. But that's not stopping them. I'm going to be a hero, damn it. Could you use the magazines as a starting tool in research from there? You can do whatever you want. I don't care. You know, there's a person that here in our chat room named Catherine Anna Hauserman, and Catherine will listen to your wants, needs, and desires with regards to building a computer along with your budget, and she will assist you in selecting the parts that will meet your needs. She does it for free. You just reach out to her on Facebook. I've had a handful of people going, well, I'm not going on Facebook. Well, then fine, then you're not getting the free help, not from there, not from them. Well, is there another way? I don't know, you find it. I've already offered you a way. It reminds me of a joke where a guy an area is flooding, and the rescue team comes and says, do you need a ride out of here? We'll get you out of here. This area is going to flood. He says, no, I'll be fine. God's going to take care of me. And as they say, okay, and they drive off, and then the water rises, and a guy in a boat comes by, and the guy is, at this point, you know, up to his chin in water. And he says, you want to ride in the boat, get out of the floods? He says, no, God's going to take care of me. So the boat says, okay, and they take off, and then the water rises, and the guy's standing on his roof, and a helicopter comes and lowers a ladder and says, get on the ladder, we'll save you. And he says, no, thank you, God will save me. God's going to take care of me. And the water rises, and the guy drowns, and he goes to heaven, and he meets God, and he's upset. He's like, you know, I've had faith in you. Why didn't you save me? And God goes, listen, I sent you a car, I sent you a boat, and I sent you a helicopter. What more do you want? Kind of reminds me of that. So yeah, Catherine will do the help for free. But you're going to have to reach out to her on Facebook. If you don't want to reach out to her on Facebook, then you can find your own source for finding somebody else to help you under those needs. It's typical that rich people can be demanding. If you're not rich and you're looking for something free, there's an old expression, beggars can't be choosers. You can take what's offered or you can politely decline it. Those are your only two options. Or you don't take care of it yourself. So it gets me really fired up. Well, I'm not going to go on Facebook. Well, then don't. I didn't ask you to. I just offered, if you wanted free help, that's how you can get it. If you don't want the free help, then don't. I don't know. It's entitlement. How much does the free service cost? Yeah, exactly. It costs you being polite and saying thank you. Catherine on Facebook, what's her Facebook handle? It's her name, Catherine Anna Hauserman. It's no handle. Catherine without an E. Sherry says, my mom used to say, never look a gift horse in the mouth. Does anybody know what that expression means? I recently learned this. Back in the day, if you gifted somebody a horse, one of the ways you could tell how healthy the horse was by looking at its teeth. So if somebody is offering you a free horse, and your response to that is to look that gifted horse in the mouth to see how healthy it is before you will accept it, it's profoundly rude. You can either take the gift or not take the gift. But to evaluate the gift, to qualify whether or not it's good enough for you to accept, results in this expression, never look a gift horse in the mouth. Whatever, if the horse has dental problems or health issues, it's still a free horse. Now, you don't have to accept it, but to measure it, to determine whether or not it qualifies for you to accept it, when it's a gift and it's not something you're paying for, that is a right that comes with paying for something. That's the moral of that story. So there we've got that all built and configured. It looks good. Just scroll through the chat here for a minute. Some people confuse freedom of speech. They think it means that we have to listen to them. Your freedom of speech comes from your own YouTube channel, not from mine. The freedom of speech is what people have to say about their government. Any business has the right to refuse service to anybody. And when people think that they can stand on my stage and shout at my audience and they have a right to it, they don't. Try that at McDonald's and you're going to get your ass kicked out. Try just yelling and how bad McDonald's food is and how much better Burger King is, and then tell those people that run McDonald's that you have a right to be inside of their property and scare away their customers. You do not have that right, and you will go to jail for trespassing. Your right to free speech is on your YouTube channel, not on mine. So just so we're clear. The ignorance and entitlement is profound. It is just basic stuff that should have been taught in schools, apparently isn't being taught anymore. Okay. So at this point, I can test the cooler if I want to, run Prime 95 on it. At this point, I think I want to install the graphics card so we can benchmark it and run the heat test. I'm not going to worry about hooking up the optical drive. I'm not going to worry about hooking up that fan cooler for the RAM. In fact, I even want to talk to the owner of this computer and try and talk him out of having me install this, as I would prefer not to put this on. It's going to get right up against the heatsink of the cooler, the CPU cooler. And when this little fan goes out, it's just another source of noise. And this fan is absolutely not necessary. It's the same Corsair RAM we use in all the builds. All the previous builds, and it does not require additional cooling. That's again more for overclocking situations, which again invites all kinds of weird problems you've got to associate for, mostly related to heat, which again comes back to stability. Now, to install the graphics card, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down, and we'll go back to full screen on camera 1 as soon as I pick the right display here. There it is. And now, ooh, that turned off fast. Let's transform that to fit the screen. There I am. Okay. And we can straighten out the camera a little bit. Now, before I install or remove any components, you need to know that there's still power running through this motherboard, even though it's off. So to ensure that there's no power running through there, I need to unplug it, and you can, hit the power button a couple times just to drain the capacitors, or just let it sit for a couple minutes. It'll dissipate on its own. And now we can get this monster out of the box. This is about $1,200 graphics card, something like that. It's expensive. It's one of the best graphics cards you can get on the market today. To go any higher than this, you'd be doubling the price to only get maybe 10 or 15% increase. At least in gaming. This is the Asus 11 Gigabyte GDDR6 OC, meaning Asus has already overclocked this card a bit from the factory. And of course, you can optionally overclock it even further if you want to, but you really don't. It's already, all the stability for performance has been worked out by the Asus engineers. And while you could eke out maybe a little tiny bit more, the cost of that with regards to reliability and cooling I've seen people kill their graphics cards by pushing them too hard. And so the guy with the dead graphics card that's $1,200, at the end of the day has a much slower graphics card than the guy with the $600 graphics card who's never overclocked it, because that guy's card is still working. And the card that's still working is the faster card. So inside of here, let's see how they package this. There it is. We've just got a driver, disk, and instruction manual in there. And then they've shrink wrapped this kind of weirdly. Unpacking steps. Let's see. There's got to be instructions on how to unpack this. Lift this up and then lay it flat. Okay. I see. Anything in there? There it is. Wow, that's 3 slots deep. And you'll see they put the plastic over their logo. Of course they did. Of course they did. There's one. There's 2. And there's 3. There we go. Now, of all the things we're putting in the system, this is the thing that's going to want the most power. You'll see it's got the 2 8-pin plugs for power. And so that's why we've gone a little overkill here with a 700-watt power supply. We probably would have been okay with 600 watts. But I went ahead, and because of the price difference, I recommended the 700-watt just to have a little bit more headroom. When you reach the upper limits of what the power supply can deliver, the power supply starts to run hotter. Got one more piece of plastic, nice back plate. It said, graphics card powerful enough to play Minesweeper. I don't know. I guess we could try it and find out. All right, so that's what she looks like. So we're going to take this little protective cover off here. And I am going to set this down so I can remove a couple of slots, PCI slots. We got to remove, I guess, 3 of them. Usually you only have to remove 2. So let's take a look here. We'll skip the top one. We'll go right to the second one. We'll go there. There. And there. Not quite sure if that third one's got to come out or not. Let's find out. We'll just set these aside. And these others are loose, so I just want to make sure the rest of these are tightened down. Looking good. Make sure the retention lever is open on the top PCI Express slot. You always want to use the top slot because that's the fastest one. And then our USB 3 cable's slightly in the way. And you're going to notice I'm going to be covering up this SATA port where I've got to plug in the optical drive. So I just want to get that cable plugged in for the optical drive, at least half of it, you know, the half that goes to the motherboard. So if I grab, let's see, those are RGB cables, temperature. We'll grab the SATA cables and we'll just get that out of the way. I like to use the cable that has the right angle to go on the back of the optical drive. And then we're going to plug that in, the opposite end of it, right here on the bottom connector on the top row, because it's easier to get to that now. Once I put the graphics card in, it's going to cover that up. And then I'll hook the rest of it up later, but I just get that out of the way so I don't have to deal with it. Looks like it. Oh, I see what I did there. Okay. We'll go in right like this. Just like this. And then we'll push it, once it's lined up with the slot, we'll push it straight on. You should hear it click. And it does look like that third slot cover will stay in place, even though it is covering it, it's not offering us anything there. So on the back plate of the GPU. So we'll just slide that back plate. I keep calling everything by the wrong name. We'll slide the PCIe cover back into place underneath the graphics card right now, so I don't have to deal with that. There we go. And now we can put those 3 thumb screws back in that we just took out. And I will have to lift up on the graphics card to take some of the pressure off of it. And then I can put that screw in for the PCI slot cover I just put back. Make sure that that's in there correctly. Oops. Okay. Now we just have to give it some power, which will be the 2 8-pin plugs that this graphics card requires. So somewhere in here we go. We've got these 2 plugs right here. It'll do the trick. And let's see. We're going to go right here with this one. These have these little 2-pin add-ons that are kind of have to fight with them a little bit and get them to line up properly. There's one. And on this graphics card, that retention clip faces down. So we'll come around here. There it is. Come on. Getting there. There it is. And I'm going to go right beside it. Okay. Now, one of the common mistakes I see people make when they get a new computer, especially if they build it themselves or they have me build it, is they end up plugging their monitor into their motherboard's onboard graphics port instead of using the discrete graphics that they paid extra for and they're not using. They don't realize there's these little dust covers. What I'll do is I'll take one dust cover off and I'll cover up the one on the motherboard. That helps customers know not to use that. And a lot of customers don't realize those are covers that come off. They're like, perhaps have a DisplayPort graphics card where I'm leaving the covers on. They're like, there's no place for me to plug my monitor in. And I'm like, well, yeah, there is. You just have to remove the little plastic dust cover. And they go, oh, I didn't realize those were little covers. They thought they were decorative. So we'll plug the monitor in down here. Now we're on our discrete graphics card. And let me move the cables out of the way, give me my mouse back. And let's fire it up again. And oh, we got to plug it in. And then we'll turn it on to input number 2 once more, which just means I have to minimize myself, put myself right up in the corner. There we go. And let's fire it up. And now any video signal should come from the graphics card. One fan is turning, the other fan started and stopped. It's got intelligent fans on, when you get to this level of graphics card, the fans will turn on and turn off as they're needed. So as not to make more noise and bring in more dust. There you go. And then these spare PCI slot covers, these are going to go in the motherboard box. And then we can visit NVIDIA.com to download the latest driver for the graphics card. Which, as I mentioned, Microsoft should be doing that in the background right now, automatically grabbing it. But they're not going to necessarily give us the latest one. So we'll just grab that ourselves by going to NVIDIA.com. And then up here, we'll go to drivers. We want GeForce drivers. And this is an RTX 2080. Oh, that's for notebooks. We don't want it for notebooks. 2080 Ti, start search. There's the driver, 442.19, released on February 3rd. And download. Save. Now the screen's blanking out because Windows Update is automatically downloaded in NVIDIA driver. That's why the font got smaller, and this happened ironically or coincidentally as I was downloading the driver direct from NVIDIA. These are not the same driver. They're compatible and it'll work, but you always want the latest one for the best performance and compatibility with the latest games. So now I should be able to run the driver I've downloaded, and I can close that window and click OK, and we'll have that extracting. Oystein's contributed 50 Norwegian kroner. It says, another great build. Thanks for sharing all of your knowledge in your videos. Oh, I'm not sharing all of my knowledge, but thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we can hit agree and continue on that. Next. Bass Lover has contributed 2 BGN. I'm not sure what BGN is, but thank you for the contribution. Tom Jackson contributed $7.77. He says, don't drop too many screws. Cheers, mate. That's all right. Gives me something to do. Let's see. Ryan Grady contributed $20. Hey, thank you, Ryan. He says, it's always great to catch you live. Hope all is well. Right on. Free Range Scotto has contributed 10 Australian dollars. He says, from one tech to another, I love your work. Thank you, Free Range Scotto. Let's make you a moderator. I appreciate that very much. Is Ryan a moderator? Yeah, Ryan's a moderator. Good. Cult of Personalities contributed $2. Says, great Monday, LOL. Thanks. I see Acronis has joined us. Welcome in, of course, to Acronis. They're always Always welcome here. And, oh, wrong mouse. We'll click next, or close rather. And I've got the Samsung Magician software and NVMe driver to install, and then we can begin testing to make sure everything's going to work okay. Beyond that, everything else is just cable management, hooking up the DVD drive, talking to the customer about the RAM cooler, which I'm going to discourage them, but if they want me to put it on, I will. But I will try to discourage them from that because I think it's just going to be a nightmare later on. Also a part I'm worried about falling off in shipping too. Let's take a look here. I've got my flash drive plugged in with my utilities on there. And let's see, let's put on the Samsung Magician software. I'll just load that right off the flash drive. This takes just a moment to install, and then it'll come up and give us the status of our Samsung drive, ensure us that it's genuine, it's not some knockoff pretending to be a Samsung drive, because people do that, especially when you buy from shady sources. Launch the Samsung Magician. Here we go. Now, if there was an update down here, there'd be like a big capital N that would say new, or I guess it stands for new. But because there's not, everything's updated, right? Samsung Magician software is the latest version, and the firmware on the drive, which is important, is the latest version. And if we look at the drive information, we want to make sure that we're in a PCI Gen 3x4 slot. And we can confirm that by looking at the data. Where is it? Under drive details. Here's our firmware version. It says latest. Our NVMe driver is Microsoft. We want to use the Samsung one. And our interface is PCIe Gen 3x4. If this was by 2, then we would only be getting half of the performance the drive is capable of. So here's our NVMe driver. Now this is sort of like changing a tire on a car. You have to stop the car to change the tire. So when we put this NVMe driver in, we will have to restart Windows for that driver to take effect. So we'll restart, and you'll see how fast this machine starts up. Start your stopwatches here. Right now. And remember, this is without any BIOS tuning. This is just straight out of the box, all default values. And we're in Windows. So it's a decent boot up time, and it's only going to get faster from here. So with the Samsung Magician software installed, I'll go back to my utilities. Actually, what I could do is we can bring up the Magician software. Well, let's see. First of all, let's turn off that. Oops. Samsung Magician software is right there. And now we just want to make sure that it says we're using the, under drive details, that we're using the Samsung NVMe driver, and we are. So that's good. That's exactly what we want to see. I'm going to go back to my flash drive, and we'll run Uncle Carey's Windows 10 Optimizer. That's what I talked about earlier. When you get this tool, which again is on sale throughout the month of February 2020 for just $7, when you double click on it, always run it from the desktop. That's what I recommend. Don't run it off the flash drive. It says it's version 1.3. We can click on options and check for updates to see if anything's new. There are no updates. All the little check boxes, what needs to be done, recommended. Anything that's a square box means it's already done. But let's go ahead and hit apply here. And it's going to make all these changes. Access denied is normal. That's with turning off indexing. It happens very quickly. And then for all the changes to take effect, it'll want to reboot again. And then our reboot should be even faster than it was last time. then I can delete that off the desktop. You only need to run it the one time and it's good to go. If you run it again, it'll just tell you. It'll analyze your machine and tell you, you don't need to run this, you've already optimized it. It's an intelligent tool. It doesn't just blindly change things. It checks to see the way it's set and the way it's recommended, and it allows you to undo any of the changes if you don't like them. So for example, just to prove it to you, if I double click on the Windows 10 Optimizer again, it says your system is already fully optimized. So therefore, we don't need it. And you see the checkboxes turned into squares. All of $7. You know, I ate at Wendy's the other day. It was $10.28 for me to get a combo meal at Wendy's. And I'm sure my optimizer tool will last a lot longer than that meal did. I mean, for comparison's sake. Anyway, I use it for myself because I just do a lot of systems. Looking back into the PC testing software, we can install the Heaven benchmark, which means I need the Visual C redistributor file, C++, for x86 and for x64. So we'll get both of those put on. Yes. And then the Unigine Heaven benchmark itself can go on now. And then finally, just waiting for that. In the PC testing software, I can look at Crystal Disk Mark, and we can measure the performance of the new solid-state drive. We'll run Prime 95 to beat the heck out of the CPU. And we'll run HW monitor to monitor the temps when we're beating the heck out of the CPU. So let's start with getting rid of the flash drive, because I think I've got everything off of there that I needed. And I don't want anything to interfere with my benchmarks. And let's start with Crystal Disk Mark, which is a portable free software you can download. If you download the zip file, that's the portable version, meaning you have nothing to install. And then we'll hit the All button. And we only have one drive. Otherwise, you want to pick the drive you want to test, which in this case is drive C, as you see in the middle of the top of the screen there. And we should see somewhere between 35 and 3600 on the reads, on sequential reads, which is good. Bass Lover says Crystal Disk Mark has a new version. All right, well, thanks for letting me know. I'll be sure and update that later tonight. Did you do the Baconator? No. No. I like their spicy chicken sandwich at Wendy's, but I eat everything plain. Like if I order a hamburger, I only want the meat and the bun. I don't want any ketchup. I don't want any mustard. I don't want any mayo. I don't want any lettuce. I don't want any cheese. Just plain meat on the bun. When I order their spicy chicken, I just want the spicy chicken sandwich on the bun with fries and a Coke. That's how I eat everything. Plain. OCD, don't like my foods touching. If I want cheese, I'll eat cheese. Normally I do the medium size, and at Wendy's the medium size is large. But this time I was there and I was hungry and I ordered the large size. So they give you like a 55-gallon drum full of Coca-Cola. This is way too big. Like nobody's bladder is as big as the size of that drink. And then all I really wanted was a large fries. I didn't need the large drink. Numbers are looking good on the Samsung drive, performing as expected. Your digestion is thanking you. It's just a personality defect. That's all I can tell you. My mom assures me she did nothing to me. I was just came out of the womb that way. Jerry says that's more SPD than OCD. Well, I'm glad you know what SPD is. Most people don't know what it is, but that's correct. Does the 55-gallon drum come with an edible hand cart? Yeah, made of pure sugar and fried. All right, let's take a look at what these sequential write speeds are going to be. Woo, 3,340. Nice. YTCon 1027 has contributed $1.99. He says, shout out. I was surprised. I'm looking at the Spotify playlists trying to see which of the Fix's songs are the most played. And they have a song called One Thing Leads to Another, which has far more listens than any of the other songs. And it's definitely, in my opinion, not their best song. And it's funny to listen to him in concert. He's like, I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote this song. And he starts playing it. One thing leads to another. And he stops and he goes, duh. But Saved by Zero, to me, is far better. Sign of Fire is far better. The Sign of Fire is such a good song. Red Skies at Night, what a fantastic song. Are We Ourselves, fantastic song. Secret Separation, fantastic song. It's weird. Stand or Fall, fantastic song. And none of those have anywhere near the number of plays that One Thing Leads to Another has. But admittedly, One Thing Leads to Another has a lot more guitar. It's a lot more rock and roll. But the guitars are so they stand out so much in The Sign of Fire and Saved by Zero. Now, I don't know what these songs mean. They're very poetic. I don't know. It's the Euro Theater. I don't even know what that means. But apparently, maybe someday I'll win. It's the Euro Theater. Means something to the guy who wrote it. But I still enjoy it. And if I ever learn what it means, I'll probably like it more. There's our final numbers from the Samsung 970 EVO Plus. Now we can run, what do we want to do next? Let's run the Heaven benchmark. David Rico says, okay, we went back to the 80s. I never left. All right, F9 should start the benchmark. There we go. So now we're officially benchmarking. And I realize when the screen is that size, my logo covers the specs that appear down in the bottom right corner. Let me see if I can just bring that up a little bit for you guys so you can watch the impressive numbers this card is delivering. Ooh, I'm getting a little... I don't know if you can hear that. It's a tiny little bit of coil whine. I'm sure when the covers are put on you won't hear it, but that's not what you'd expect from a card that much money. I gotta save this bottle. It's special. Yeah, you can clearly, I can clearly hear the little whine when the graphics card is working. And when it's just idling, like there in the blank screen, the coil whine goes away. And when it starts showing graphics again, working graphics, it comes back. And I'm sure when it goes to the desktop, it'll be perfectly silent. So it's only when it's being pressed hard that it's complaining a bit. There's our final numbers for the Unigine Heaven benchmark, and the system specs are listed there as well. So we'll go ahead and close that out and move on to the next test. As soon as I quit the test, the coil whine went away. Interesting. If we go to, let's go to hardware monitor. And we'll run the 64-bit version of that software. And then let's run Prime 95. And I always like to run this for 15 minutes. It'll be 100% core usage with all the default values on all 8 cores. And we'll see how high these temperatures are going to climb. With the left side here being the current temperature, the middle being the lowest temperature it's recorded since I started the software. And then the maximum temperature, this is what I'm watching, is this right side. We can also notice the clock speed here. Again, current clock speed, slowest clock speed, maximum clock speed. These are all related. We want to make sure that this stays under 85 degrees Celsius or centigrade for a period of 15 minutes. This is a very unrealistic, heavy workload that 99% of end users would never exceed. So if the computer can live through this without overheating, I can rest easy knowing that whatever the customer does with it, it won't have any problems with heat-related issues, no matter what the customer does. I don't run benchmarks to set records. I don't run benchmarks to compare myself against others. Comparison is the cause of all unhappiness. And I had a little eyeglass holder for my glasses, and I'm walking around while this is running, trying to find what I did with them. Probably need to put my glasses on to find it. Ah, here it is. So we're going to let this run for 15 minutes. If you have any technical questions for me, this will be the time to ask, because now we just kind of sit around and wait. 8 minutes extended version of One Thing Leads to Another. It's not that I don't like that song. It's just, of all the songs the Fix sings, that one's at the bottom of my playlist. Like the first one would be The Sign of Fire. That's my #1 song by the Fix. Then it would probably be Red Skies at Night, and then it would be Saved by Zero, and there's an extended version of Saved by Zero with all different lyrics, which is cool. And then it would go to Secret Separation, and then Are We Ourselves. And every time I hear the song Stand or Fall, I just think of Adam Ant, or Adam and the Ants, and they have a song called Stand and Deliver. I think those two songs would be good back to back. In fact, on YouTube, there's videos of Adam Ant playing live in 2018 or 2019. And he reminds me of Johnny Depp, and he sounds horrible, just horrible. So I just can't get over how good the Fix sounds. I can't get over how amazing their live performance is so close to what you hear on the radio. And I also don't know why that other bands have such difficulty. I like that Scythe, the lead singer, says, isn't it nice, he's telling the audience, the guy's got a guitar in his hands, and he says, isn't it nice to get back to something organic? I've had my head buried in my digital phone all day. It's just nice to get back to something organic. And I agree with him. I think he's dead on with that. Something about balance. Oh, let's see, what questions do we have in here. Carey, would you recommend Windows 10 LT SB for home use? No, especially no. There's a reason why that's only available for enterprise users. Sometimes Windows updates can cause problems with productivity in an office workplace environment. And I'm talking large companies with thousands of employees. So Windows has a version called LTSB that's for companies that want to apply their own updates where they can thoroughly test them they can have full control over them anyway, but it's just for corporations. Individuals who are like, oh man, this Windows update's made it so I can't play Minesweeper today. No. The problem with individuals is they're profoundly irresponsible and lack the complete understanding, overall, a complete lack of depth in their understanding of PC security. They only know what they've read online, and they call themselves experts when they really, if you've met somebody who really understands security, your eyes will glaze over. You will realize then how much you don't know. And to put you in the position of deciding which updates are good for you or not endangers the entire internet. It's just like being an anti-vaxxer. You do whatever you want, but I can't condone it. In a corporate environment, the needs are different, and they do have college-educated security experts hired in those positions that qualify them to engage with the LTSB version. Home users, I've never met a home user qualified for that. Never in my life. So, no, I don't recommend it. Carey, I heard Gen 4 NVMe drives will not provide a noticeable performance difference for most people. What's your opinion on that? Oh, I fully agree. We talked about this before. You start reaching a point of diminishing returns. So if it takes your computer 2 minutes to boot to the desktop, and you go to just a SATA-based solid-state drive, and you save 80% of your boot time, 80% of 2 minutes is quite a savings. But now let's say your boot time is 20 seconds. And let's say going to an NVMe drive generation 3x4 will save you another 80%. Well, now 80% of 20 seconds not a huge gain. Or maybe be like, well, let's call it, yeah, we'll call it 80%. So now let's say your system boots in 6 or 8 seconds. And let's say by going to Gen 4, it can then save you another 20%. Well, 20% of 6 or 8 seconds is only shaving a second or two off. You understand that you've got the less time your computer takes to boot, the less performance increase you're going to see, because you're not going to go any faster than the time you hit the button, right? The most you could ever save is 6 seconds. If you have a 6-second boot time, the fastest possible speed to boot would be 6 seconds. It's never going to boot before you hit the button. I guess that's what people are trying to accomplish on the internet. They want their computer to boot before they turn it on. I don't know how that works. There are certain use case scenarios from a very small percentage of computer users that will see a benefit to the faster performance. But that does not represent the average user. And those people already know. They don't need to hear from me. They already know what the benefit is. If you have to ask, you won't see a benefit from it. Not much of one. Be very minor. Can you explain that noise from the GPU? It's coil whine. It's a high frequency vibration that's occurring from the wires that are wrapped around they're like transformers. The coils under high frequencies, they start to vibrate and they let out high pitched tones. And the harder the card works, the more power is drawing through it, and the more that power is. You ever touched an electrical outlet and it made you vibrate? It's kind of like that. Only they're wires. You know what's inside of a piano? Wires. And those wires are pulled to certain lengths to establish different tones. It's the same wire in a piano used over and over and over again, and it's just cut at different lengths. The shorter the cable, the higher the tone. The longer the cable, the lower the tone. In any event, that's the gist of it. That's not the science, it's not a complete electrical engineering class here, but that's the gist of it. Sometimes that may be considered normal from some manufacturers. From other manufacturers, it would be unacceptable. You kind of have to contact your manufacturer and talk to them. You may end up getting another card. You could go through the whole RMA process and get another card that performs exactly the same way. To me, it's not a big deal killer. The coil whine on that's not bad. When you put the covers on and when the computer's down on the floor, which is where most people put it, you probably won't hear it at all. But some people are more sensitive to high-pitched noises. Also, some people can't hear it at all, especially older people. Our general hearing range is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz if you're a human being. On the low end is 20 hertz, on the high end is 20,000 hertz, or 20 kilohertz, 20,000 hertz. So from 20 to 20,000. 20 is down bass, 20,000 is shriek. And as we get older, we have little fibers, little hairs in our ear. I can't remember what they're called, but they sort of become desensitized, especially when you're around a lot of loud noises and things, and just through life. Muscles aren't as flexible. That's why I have to wear glasses. The lenses in my eyes can't flex the way they used to. So reading becomes harder, and it just comes with age. So many of us, as we get older, we start to lose that super high end of our hearing, and may not bother some people at all because they just never will hear it, depending on how much of their hearing they've lost. And I'm just talking natural hearing loss that comes with age, that none of us can avoid. It's just a part of the aging and partly genetics. We also lose some of the low end, but low end is certainly not as important. Low end is not, sorry, computer, the screen went to sleep. Give me a minute here. I didn't realize I was watching the wrong screen. On the low end, it's not directional. Basically, high-pitched noises you can really tell left from right, but low, deep, bassy tones, you can't really tell where they're coming from. So within reason, right? there's circumstances where you can say, oh, that came from over there. But in general, if you're in a room and there's a subwoofer and it's placed properly, you won't know where the subwoofer is. The whole room will just seemingly thump. That being said, I'm not a hearing expert. I don't know a whole lot about the biology of the ear, but it will drive some people crazy. And generally, those people will be younger, and it can feel like nails on a chalkboard to them. But this is pretty quiet. Like, I had the microphone right up against it so you could hear it. And if you put into like a Be Quiet case or, an insulated case, that would reduce that noise even further. We are at 12 and a half minutes, and so far temps are still looking really, really good there. What's the highest I've got? 72? Is that what I'm seeing? Maximum? That's very acceptable. Bass Lover says, I love your videos and streams. You are a kind and good person. Keep it up. Thank you. John Williams says, good afternoon, Carey. We're getting blasted with snow today in Madison, so I will call it. Have a nice evening. I'm going to fire up my snowblower. Must be in Wisconsin, huh? The ear hairs are called cilia. I don't know. Most older people suffer from tinnitus, so every day sounds like coil wine. I have to tell you, Paul, when I was in Michigan at that cottage at the river, it was so quiet that the tinnitus, I didn't realize I had it as bad as I had it. It was almost maddening. I'm so used to being in Phoenix where there's always noise. There's always noise, whether it's cars or stereos or whatever. That high-pitched whistle that's always in my ear, I never really notice it. But then I went to Michigan, and I'm in this beautiful rural cottage by a river, and it was like somebody took a megaphone to my ears and was whistling in it. I can't whistle. That's all I could hear, and it drove me batty. I had to turn I got a fan, like an oscillating fan, and I turned it on so I could hear the drone of the fan, and that took this whistle out. I had to have some white noise. So as long as there's other noise, my brain's not paying attention to the whistle. But if there's nothing, if it's just dead silent, that whistle will not stop, and it's maddening. It feels like it got louder. It's very strange. We're just crossing over 15 minutes. I'll let the test run on an additional 5 here. Get the Ryzen 3950X, says Chris Charles. The Ryzen 3950X is in the system behind me back over there. That's going to be the new video editor. I think that's the job we're gonna at least try and see how it performs. And that's gonna have a 2080 Ti in it as well. No, that'll have a 2080 RTX in there. The 2080 Ti is gonna go in the Xenos build. And the Xenos build is gonna be used for gaming, and we're gonna see how they each perform in their assigned tasks as we follow up with them after the builds. And I think there's not enough YouTube channels that follow up after their builds. Like, here's how you build a computer, and then happily ever after. It's sort of like fairy tales in Disneyland, or Disney movies rather. The princess marries the prince, and it's happily ever after. Probably not. Let's find out what happens. Let's follow up in a couple of months. Let's follow up in a couple of years. Let's see how things are going. It's rarely ever happily ever after, especially with technology. So I will be revisiting these builds after they're complete to follow up with them. Hugh Wong has contributed $2. He goes, you're a very kind-hearted and frustrated person. You summed it up well, Hugh. Thank you. I'm forced to live in a world where everybody doesn't play by the same rules. We don't follow the same cultures. We don't assimilate to one another, like we don't integrate like we used to. Everybody's going to do whatever the hell they want to do and to be damned with anybody else. Just bring up the subject of reclining an airline seat, right? The airline seat has a button to recline it. But if you do that, you're rude to the person behind you. Well, then why is the button there? And how come the people who pay the least for their airplane seats are the ones who complain the most? Like, if you have enough money to sit in first class, you wouldn't have to worry about reclining seats. And if the reclining seats were such an issue, why are they there? And some people have back issues. They can't sit upright like that on a plane for hours. They have to recline. And the recline goes back this far. I can't imagine how that is a big deal in somebody's life. But about once a month in the news, there's a story about this turning into a big fight on an airplane. Who's the one breaking the rules? But that's what we've become to live in, the society of my needs are more important than your needs. And it's frustrating to me, because if you have needs that are special, then don't inject yourself with the rest of us and force us to deal with you. Apart from obvious physical, handicaps and things like that, between people trying to bring on emotional support animals, which is ridiculous and stupid, in my opinion, complaining about reclining seats. These are the people who buy the cheapest seats on the plane. I would like to see the price of plane tickets go up by about 3 times. Then those people won't be able to afford them anymore. Those are the people that are causing the problems. The people with the money, the people who can afford first class, the people who can afford to pick the seat they want, which isn't that much more money, honestly, can choose to sit in a row like the first row where there's nobody in front of you, so you don't have to worry about a reclining seat. It's preposterous. So yes, I am frustrated that I was brought up that you're not here for the world to rotate around you, and the world owes you nothing, but you can achieve anything you want if you set your mind to it. If you're willing to sacrifice and you're willing to work hard, you can achieve anything. And that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now it's pretty much do whatever you want and force other people to have to deal with you. And if they don't, then report it to the news. And the fact that the news will carry these stories, like there's nothing else to report on. This guy was hit in the back of my airplane seat the whole flight. That's news? So yeah, I'm frustrated. Thanos has contributed $2. He says, game computer, 3900X or 9900K, why? You'd want the 9900K because it's better at single core performance in gaming. The 3700X would be better if you were looking to do work, rendering, things like that. It's more optimized. The 3700X is more optimized for a video editor than it is for gaming than the 9900K. That being said, they're both good processors, and it would be highly unlikely that you as an individual would really be able to tell them apart when gaming or when rendering. But when you're looking at benchmark numbers, and you can verify this online through the numerous tests that people do, like AnonTech and Tom's Hardware, you'll see that the 3700X does not perform as well in games overall, but it does perform better in rendering. And the 9900K is the opposite. But that doesn't make one chip better than the other one. There's no sort of one size fits all here where it's going to be the best at everything. Each chip has its pros and its cons, and you just pick the right one that's right for you. Don't worry about what anybody else says. Ryan Grady's contributed again. He's contributed $2. He goes, that was more than $2 worth. Thank you. All right. We've crossed over 21 minutes on this test, which is far, far too long in my opinion. And the maximum temp we've hit is 84 degrees centigrade, and it only hit it momentarily. Currently, our temps, the highest temp is 81. So we're good. We're good. I mean, we stayed right below the threshold. Oh, just went to sleep on me. We stayed below the threshold. Now watch how fast those temperatures are about to drop when I shut this test down. Watch these temps right here. Watch how quickly they're going to fall. Boom. There they go. It already dropped by 30 degrees centigrade within 2 seconds. And the fan was getting a little bit loud there too. That Scythe cooler was about the loudest I've ever heard it, and even that was a very low drone. Now it's completely silent. I can't hear it at all. But even when it was loud, it wasn't loud. So still continuing to love that cooler. I think that's going to do it for the testing for today. Let's go ahead and shut this down, and I'll take you back over to full screen on camera 1 so we can wrap up today's video. Let's see, camera 1, full screen. There it is. Okay, so what is rendering? So let's say I make a video on YouTube and I got a bunch of footage and I want to cut some footage and add some transitions and special effects, and I've got it all laid out just the way I want it to be. It's a project. It's just a project. When I render it, what it does is it takes all that, does all the math, and combines, if I got a green screen effect and I got a transition and I got an edit and I'm cutting this footage out and I'm replacing this audio, the render puts all that together in one final output file, which is a lot of CPU computational work. Or a lot of times with many graphics, with many editing programs, it's heavy on the CUDA cores, on the graphics card, which would be NVIDIA, not Radeon. So NVIDIA is generally preferred for that. However, it depends on the editing software, and it's often where cores are going to come in. Programs like Blender would use a lot of cores if you've got them. Other programs won't use many cores regardless of how many you have. So rendering could also be, you could be in Photoshop and you've got multiple layers of photos and you're sort of, getting it all sorted the way you want it. Think of it like the print button. You can be in Microsoft Word and you can put your little graphic up there and change your font and make this bold and make this underline. But it's when you hit print that it has to render that page to something the printer can understand and give you that final output. That would be a similar render, but very simple compared to video editing. When you think about Star Wars or science fiction movies in particular, where there's a heavy amount of editing and special effects and sound, the rendering is what happens when the edit is complete. A movie like 1917, which is filmed looking like it's one continuous shot that never moves to another camera, is done with some very clever editing, and of course that all has to be, like anything else, rendered. Movies like Toy Story or other animations, each frame is rendered, and there's usually 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second in cinema. So they have to do 24 frames. They each have to be rendered individually. And then that can complete one frame of one second of video, and then they will do that for whatever the length of the movie is. Most average movies have over 2,000 edits, not including audio and Foley, like when somebody's walking. Microphones aren't on the ground picking up those steps. Somebody is walking on a board or whatever, simulating whatever the surface is the actor is walking on. This is done after the fact. A lot of what you see in movies is shot just 5 to 30 seconds at a time. And then that is all pushed together in editing and then finally rendered out as a final scene or a final movie. And it takes a lot of computational power. So that's the gist of rendering. It can also happen if you look at an architect who's got a wireframe model of a building, and then they want to fill that in to make it look like it would look when it's completed, that all the shading has to be done correctly, the lighting has to be done correctly. It's a complex mathematical computation that takes place for each one of those little triangles seen in a wireframe. Contribution come in from, from Bear Paw for £2. This is here's for a couple of Cokes. Right on, thank you very much. And that's going to do it for me. Chili Finger wants to quote me, but there's no T in my last name. And I think Crystal wants to know about GPU testing. We just tested it. Okay. Troll McTrollington says, I work in the movie industry and 5 seconds of footage takes about 1 day of filming. I guess it depends what you're filming. Like a romantic comedy, you can get more than 5 seconds of footage out of a day of shooting. But it depends what you're shooting. Some scenes could take a week to get 10 seconds. It depends, again, what you're shooting and how often the actors screw up. And it's not just the actors that screw up. If they got a guy holding a boom microphone and it gets down into at the top of it, and I notice this all the time. when I'm watching, especially like old talk shows like the Dick Cavett show. The boom mic operator, you could see the top of the mic fall into the frame. In a movie, they would cut, they'd have to do it all over again. And you can imagine how pissed off an actor would be when they're putting their heart and soul into their performance, and then one of the crew does something stupid and gets into the scene, and the actor has to start all over again. Like if you got a scene where you got to pour your heart out and you got to cry, and you've given it everything you've got, and somebody walks right in front of the camera because they don't realize you're not rehearsing or something, you can understand why there can be videos of these actors losing their minds. What are you doing? You know, there's one like Christian Bale just lost his mind. Well, he just gave his ultimate performance, and some thoughtless crew member just completely ruined that take, and they have to start over again. And the crew plays a very important role in the whole production, because if you, there's certain movies where the crew have to do things while the camera's turned. And when the camera comes back, the crew better be done making the change and out of the way, or everybody has to start all over again. So it's a really interesting dance that has to be done with precision, and it has to be done repetitively over and over and over until you get it just the way the director sees it in his head, or the director of photography, whoever it is that's in charge of that. And it takes a lot of work. So yeah, that's why you may only end up with 5 seconds of usable footage at the end of the day. It's movie industry is fascinating to me, and then you got to consider everything that happens after the movie. In the original Star Wars movie, the first one in 1977, that opening scene where Darth Vader's, you know, they're going through the door and they're coming in, that whole thing was shot without audio. It's just a director yelling at people, do this, now fire your gun, now fall down, now walk forward. And then that's all replaced with sound effects, footsteps, guns firing, dramatic music, and all the audio that took place during that shoot is all removed. And when it's done well, you can't even tell. Sometimes actors have to come back in and replace their own audio. In the movie Logan, that last Wolverine movie, they've got a camera shot of him running through the woods, and he's running as fast as he can run through the woods. And he has to, and there's a YouTube video on this. He's in a sound booth making running sounds. He's, oh, and it's just him making these sounds, and that's dubbed over because their footage is so far away, they can't pick up whatever sounds he's making, if he was making any at all when he shot that scene. So all this stuff is happening all in the background. You would never know. It's absolutely fascinating, the movie magic that occurs. And now with in-camera visual effects, it's gotten even cooler, where they put up giant LCD walls and the actors act against no longer a green screen. Now the actors can see exactly what's on the screen, and it's all rendered out using like Unreal Tournament game engine, and it's all in the camera. So when the camera moves, the wall moves, the whole image on the wall moves. And so the actor doesn't have to pretend like he's in a hangar full of spaceships. He can see a hangar full of spaceships. And it helps the actors in their environments to understand. When you're acting against a green screen, it's far more difficult. And who would have thought video games would move into video production in that way? And it's what made the Mandalorian series so successful and so inexpensive, to be able to use the Unreal Engine in the development of the special effects for that show. Again, all of this is on YouTube if you guys want to research it. It's fascinating stuff. A couple of contributions came in here. Marty Yoels contributed $20. Hey, thank you, Marty. He did it twice. Thank you twice. He says, good day, bro, in chat. Good day to you. And I think that's about gonna wrap it up. Just looking for any final comments there. Yeah, Mitch Morrison can tell you about it, because Mitch Morrison has been in a couple of movies, so he's been there. And a lot of times the behind-the-scenes stuff, how it's made, they don't really show you how it's made. They're showing you very selected. It's like a magician saying, I'll show you how these tricks are done, but he's only showing you very simple, basic tricks, not the complicated stuff. So being there is a whole different process. Okay, so I guess what I'll do tonight is I'm going to finish up the cable management here. I'll hook up the DVD drive. I'm going to get Windows activated. I'll talk to the customer about this, again, this cooler. I really want to advise against installing this RAM cooler. I do believe it's unnecessary. But if he wants me to install it, I will. And then it can be buttoned up. And then I'll get some final shots with all the cable management done. And that won't be live here, but that'll be tacked on to the end of the final edited video that my sister will edit together without all the chit-chat. You know, she'll put the 2 days of work into one video with just the work. So you'll probably see my shirt change halfway through. That's okay. Thanos says, I love you, Uncle Carey. I've never met, but you taught me everything I know about computers, but not everything you know. Yeah, we'll keep it that way. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to all my friends in blue for helping keep it civil in the chat room today. We had a couple of people there trying to establish their dominance. I appreciate that you shut them down. Let me give a shout out to everybody who has contributed during today's broadcast, and that includes Steve Devine, Cog Jin, Tina McLaughlin, Randy Johnson, Andy Nicolau, Steve Warrington, Thomas Robinson, Hugh Wong, Wilhelm Gordon, Bear Paw, Rick Lakes, Wilkins Rojas, Brendan Looney, and Mario L. and Ryan Grady, Thanos, Jean Tem. Oh, I missed this one from Jean Tem. It says, I had to troubleshoot my PC that failed to boot even into the BIOS with no monitor image. Went back to your old videos in quick tips and thought it was my motherboard. Turned out it was the CPU. That was rough. Thank you. Those are tough to diagnose. John Craig contributed 10 pounds. He said, at 70 years old, I've never had tinnitus and my hearing is fine. Much sympathy to sufferers. You got good genetics, John. You can thank your parents. Joseph Panariello's contributed $5 and said, how is your dad? He's doing well. Thanks for asking. Mervyn Jordan had contributed $5 and says, during your next H370 HD3 build, please disclose that the CPU backplate will not be straight after installation. What are you talking about? The CPU backplate for the Scythe cooler stays straight. I'm kind of confused by that. Glenn Davies says, thanks, Professor. This is still the best channel to learn stuff. YTCon 1027, Cult of Personality, Peter Laycock, of course, thank you for all of your kindness and generosity. Oystein, watching us there out of Norway. Bass Lover, Tom Jackson, Free Range Scotto, Reverend John O'Toole. Thanks you guys so much for supporting the channel and helping to keep me sponsor free. I appreciate that more than you can know. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. I will see you all again very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.